Chapter 1108. That's because he is extremely good-looking, and his cultivation is also not bad at such a young age. This Empress Dowager is very optimistic about him. If you're willing, this Empress Dowager will make the decision and let you meet him. The Empress Dowager said with a smile, if you don't like him, then this Empress Dowager will help you find someone else. Queen Dowager. Commandery Princess Anne's expression stiffened before turning into a bashful smile. Her hand holding Her Majesty the Queen Dowager also involuntarily paused, and she quickly said, and only wishes to be able to accompany the Queen Dowager. Sigh, what nonsense are you saying? The Queen Dowager cast her a glance before harumphing, I am just an old woman, so it's fine with Feng-gu accompanying me. You are so young, so of course you have to find a good in-law. What is there to be shy about? My youngest granddaughter-in-law hasn't even turned 15 this year, yet she has already been engaged to my grandson. That's why it is better to get married sooner rather than later. Otherwise, all the good ones will be taken away. Behind her, elderly Nanny Feng-gu burst into laughter and couldn't resist teasing, Your Majesty, young ladies are all shy. How do you want the Commandery Princess to answer your question? Okay, then I will make the decision. The Queen Dowager nodded with a chuckle. In 2 days, have the Countess of Jian and come over for tea and have her bring that rascal into the palace. Let our and take a look. Feng-gu agreed with a smile. Yes, Your Majesty. This old servant will remember this. Commandery Princess Anne's slender hand that was hanging by her side clenched slightly before letting go. She revealed a gentle and bashful smile that was just the right amount of gentleness. The group accompanied the Queen Dowager to stroll around the small garden for an hour before returning to the Longevity Palace. After and bid farewell and left, Feng-gu handed a cup of tea to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. The Queen Dowager shook her head slightly as she watched Anne's departing figure. Feng-gu, what do you think this child is thinking? Feng-gu quickly said, Your Majesty the Queen Dowager has already done your best for Commandery Princess Anne. The Commandery Princess will definitely understand. This morning, we only mentioned casually that the Crown Prince should also like such good pastries. But to her, it would become following an imperial edict to deliver pastries to the Eastern Palace. If the Crown Prince wasn't smart enough, he might even develop a grudge against his grandmother. Feng-gu nodded slightly. Your Highness's eyes are as sharp as torches. What can be hidden from Your Highness's eyes? It's not that I don't know. All these years, Anne had always wanted to approach the Crown Prince step by step, but if the Crown Prince was truly interested in her, would he need to wait until now? Her Highness is the wisest. Feng-gu nodded as she took out a hot handkerchief and handed it to the Empress Dowager to wipe her hands. She casually said, Then the son of the Count of Jian Anne's family today was also deliberately probed by Your Highness. That's not it. The Queen Dowager shook her head and accepted the handkerchief to wipe her hands, saying, I have watched and grow up. I also hope that she can find a good family and have a good husband in the future. The Count of Jian has a good family background. The Count of Jian and his wife are both good people. The most important thing is that there are no messy concubines at home. The Count of Jian has been guarding his wife for 30 years. That's great. The son of the Count of Jian Peidao, was also young and promising. He never had bad habits. He is a youth that the Crown Prince values, so his future is naturally limitless. We truly want to betroth her to the son of the Count of Jian. The Queen Dowager sighed as she said, but from the looks of it, there probably isn't much of a chance. Chapter 1109. And will definitely understand Your Majesty's painstaking efforts in the future. It's also my fault for not disciplining him strictly. The Great King's current state is mostly due to my spoiling. Back then. Sigh, let's not talk about it. What's done is done, and it can't be remedied. The Queen Dowager sighed with melancholy. Just like a normal mother, she had followed the former king to conquer the country and suffered enough, so she wanted to give her son the best things in the world. She had spoiled the great king, Mole, since he was young, so he didn't amount to much. The great king's situation had formidable parents and a fierce son, while he himself was unambitious and relied on his parents above and his son below. Thus, he got by just like this. It's just my grandson who has suffered, having such an unreliable father. He has been burdened with a lot of things since he was young. The Queen Dowager lamented, he finally found someone he likes and wants to spend the rest of his life with. No matter what, this widow cannot let anyone ruin it. Of course. Feng Gu said with a nod, these past few days, this old servant has been hearing Gong Chang and talk about the crown princess. This old servant is also itching to meet the crown princess immediately. The Queen Dowager smiled again, her eyes narrowed into slits. I liked it the moment I heard it. This child will definitely hit it off well with me. And this child is good at everything. It's just that she is a bit too pretentious and not sincere enough. The Queen Dowager commented with a shake of her head. And actually didn't understand the Queen Dowager. The Queen Dowager was an honest elderly lady, and it wasn't without reason that she liked the Crown Prince and Little Twelfth. These two children were just normal grandchildren in front of her, and they would happily call her grandmother when they saw her. Other children would not be like this. If and wasn't so pretentious and let go of her temperament in front of the Queen Dowager, perhaps the Queen Dowager would like her a bit more. Her standards are so high, and the one she likes is the Crown Prince. She clearly knows that it is a dead end, yet she still insists on running headfirst into it when this widow lured her back. The Queen Dowager sighed. At this moment, a secret guard came to report that the Crown Prince had left the capital. When the Empress Dowager heard this, she laughed loudly. She pulled Aunt Feng aside and said, "Look, look, look. My grandson has gone to chase after his wife. We've only been gone for less than 10 days. Look at how impatient this child is." Ha 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 ha. Feng Gu pursed her lips and giggled. My Joe's section break. At the same time, Arbor was strolling aimlessly in the Mystic Beast forest. If he encountered any ignorant profound beasts that pounced over, he would mercilessly kill them with a single strike, and then instinctively dig out their crystal cores. The entire Mystic Beast forest was like her home's imperial garden. She walked and stopped, and from time to time, she would use her spiritual perception to scan her surroundings. She was searching for a better place with dense mystic energy to cultivate. In front of them was a small stream, the sound of water flowing through the forest. Sikong Fulling, who was sitting on a rock by the stream and washing her prey, turned her head warily when she heard faint footsteps. He couldn't help but stare blankly. Arbor walked over expressionlessly. After surveying the surroundings with his spiritual perception, he stretched out his leg to walk forward. Hey, there's water up ahead. You'll get wet if you step in." Sikong Fulling quickly stood up and pulled him back. Arbor turned his head, his unfocused gaze landing on her face. Gulp. A loud rumbling sound came from his stomach. Sikong Fulling couldn't help but smile after being taken aback. She pulled him back a few steps. "Wait here." Chapter 11:10. Arbor simply didn't know that Sikong Fulling was talking to her. She just instinctively found a clean place to sit down. Very quickly, Sikong Fulling set up a bonfire and placed a small type of cleanly skinned mystic beast on it to roast. Not long after, the aroma wafted out, and Sikong Fulling grumbled, "My mouth is so bland from eating dry rations every day." Fortunately, this kind of small mystic beast hasn't mutated. Although the meat isn't considered fresh and tender, it's still enough to eat 2 bites. I spent a lot of effort to get rid of the fishy smell. As Sikong Fuling spoke, she threw her a piece of thigh meat wrapped in leaves. Arbor sat at the side like a jade carving. When the item flew in front of her, she couldn't help but reach out to catch it steadily. Sikong Fuling raised her eyebrows, and her probing gaze fell on her. She was clearly blind, so how could her movements be so precise? Could it be that her mystic sense was very powerful? Thinking of the Raksha princess who had been defeated and fled by Arbor, that person suddenly clutched her head and retreated in defeat. Could that be the legendary mystic sense attack? Sikong Fuling's pupils immediately contracted, and she took a bite of the mystic beast meat in her hand. It was hard, sour, and unpalatable, and truly had a feeling of being unable to swallow it. Looking up again, she saw that the little girl had finished eating that piece of thigh meat in a short while. Sikong Fuling inwardly admired this little fellow. She was so young, but she could endure so much hardship. Look at her eating such unpalatable meat without wrinkling her brows in order to fill her stomach. She couldn't even compare to such a small little girl. Sikong Fuling frowned and looked like she was going to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire. She swallowed that hard and somewhat sour meat bite by bite, and she repeatedly vomited as she ate. Her admiration for Arbor increased by several degrees. She was worthy of being the crown princess at such a young age. She was indeed born with the spirit of a superior person. How could Sikong Fuling know that the little girl had no sense of taste at all? Everything she ate was like chewing wax, and it was just a subconscious action to fill her stomach. If she regained her sense of taste, not to mention such a large piece of meat, even if it was just a bite, she would spit it out. At night, Sikong Fuling found a clean place to lie down and rest. Glancing over, she saw Arbor sitting upright and still under a tree, meditating with his eyes closed. The corners of her mouth twitched involuntarily. Was there a need for this child to be so hurtful? Would he die if he didn't cultivate for a day? Cultivating at night instead of sleeping was simply an eyesore. She touched the dagger beside her and tossed and turned for most of the night. Then she sat up and looked at Arbor's expressionless face in the darkness. Right now, she should be completely immersed in cultivation. Gritting her teeth, Sikong Fuling stood up and agilely walked to her side. Should she make a move on her? That vicious little fellow had almost taken his elder brother's life with that slash of his saber. That was a real stab to the heart. Even as a bystander, she felt her heart ache. Not to mention how pitiful and heartbroken her elder brother, who had really suffered that stab. Sikong Fuling reached out to touch the dagger tied to her calf and made a motion to pull it out. Then, she paused and looked at Arbor with a melancholy expression. Forget it. She still owed her a life. How could she do something like repay kindness with enmity? Chapter 11:11. Moreover, although she was a demoness, she still had her bottom line. Out of sight, out of mind. Sikong Fuling simply turned and left the stream, heading to other parts of the forest through the night. Less than a second after she left, Arbor opened her eyes, and her tense aura slowly relaxed. If Sikong Fuling had made a move just now, Arbor would have killed her without hesitation. Because anyone who hindered her from cultivating must go to hell. In a moment, Sikong Fuling had slipped one round around the gates of hell. Arbor didn't care where Sikong Fuling went. She didn't even know this person and closed her eyes. Sikong Fuling didn't know how long she had walked for, but she felt that it should have been the middle of the night. Day and night couldn't be seen in this gloomy mystic beast forest, but according to her estimation, it should be dawn now. Sikong Fuling halted her steps and turned back to take a look. She didn't know what was wrong with that fellow, but she was blind and somewhat dazed. Wasn't it too much for her to leave just like that? After all, she had saved her life before, and all the previous small conflicts could be disregarded. What if that fellow starved herself to death just like that? Then wouldn't she have indirectly killed her benefactor? Seekong Foling also didn't understand her current state of mind. After being conflicted for a while, she couldn't resist turning around and sprinting toward the stream. However, when she ran back to the stream, she discovered that the little fellow had long disappeared without a trace. And right at this moment, a fiery cloud soared into the sky, boiling over half of the sky. A layer of golden red light descended to the earth along with this fiery cloud, forming a spectacular golden pillar that connected the sky and earth together. Stunned, Seekong Foling opened her mouth wide and looked up at the horizon. What the fuck was that? The phoenix egg has descended. A bloodfire phoenix egg. Father, the bloodfire phoenix egg really has descended, Liang Qingqing exclaimed with a slightly agitated expression. Sect Master Liang smiled and nodded, everyone, be careful. This bloodfire phoenix egg can't possibly have popped out from a crack in a rock. If the phoenix couple is also present, don't do anything and just watch the show. That's right. The sect master of the Heavenly Path sect, Sitamin, nodded. He turned around and said a few words to the excited disciples. The most unlucky ones were Mu Boming, Do Heping, and Qin Guelu. They were originally flying towards Arbor's cultivation ground, but halfway through, they realized that the halo had completely disappeared. At that time, Arbor had already exited his cultivation state and was fighting with the Rakshasa Ghost sect leader, Princess Rakshasa. Mu Boming and the others lost the location of Arbor's cultivation, so they could only search the vicinity in a daze. However, Arbor continued to wander in the forest. How could they find her? Mu Boming and the others couldn't help but vomit blood when they saw the place where the bloodfire phoenix egg had lit up. It was actually a place that was very far away from them in a straight line. This time, they really had to speed up and run wildly. Along the way, there were disciples who couldn't keep up with their speed and fell behind, but Mu Boming, Do Heping, and the others couldn't care less. They just kept urging themselves to go faster, faster, and even faster in their hearts. Their phoenix egg, ah. They didn't want others to beat them to it. Back to Arbor. Not long after Seekong Foling left, she also exited her cultivation state. Chapter 11-12. She disliked that the mystic energy next to the stream wasn't dense enough and wanted to move to another place to search. Just as she was casually strolling around, she sensed that more than half of the mystic beast forest was suddenly covered by a surge of restless and dense fire spiritual energy. Hurl. Something fell from the sky and smashed toward her head. In the blink of an eye, Arbor turned around and swiftly stepped away, avoiding the whistling sound of the wind. Boom! That thing smashed into the thick pile of withered grass in the forest. Xiaomu used her spiritual conscience to look over and saw that it was a strange oval-shaped object that was sitting on the pile of withered grass just like that. Its entire body was overflowing with a red light, and it looked quite big and heavy. She didn't know what the hell it was, but when it fell from the sky just now, it almost smashed through her head. Arbor turned around and was about to stroll around again when she heard a rumbling sound. When she turned around to look, that oval-shaped thing had actually rolled to her little feet. Xiaomu didn't hesitate at all and directly kicked it flying. Qinghuan, who had silently appeared, couldn't help but cover her eyes with her wings. Didn't I already say not to act cute in front of Master? Master isn't a normal girl at all, okay? She never liked cute things. Master. Qinghuan felt that she needed to remind her foolish master. Pitiful little master, she was actually tricked into this state by the giant ape. A heaven-defying, unparalleled bloodfire phoenix egg fell from the sky and rolled to her feet, but she actually didn't want it. Arbor actually didn't hear Qinghuan's voice. She only felt that something had appeared beside her, so she blankly turned her head and looked at Qinghuan. She kept feeling that her mind was blank, but there was a voice in her heart that wanted to tell her, this weak chicken can't be beaten. Master, this is a Bloodfire Phoenix egg and can't be kicked. You should pick it up and bring it back. After speaking, she realized that her little master couldn't hear her at all. Moreover, with her current brain, she reckoned that she wouldn't understand what she meant even if she heard. A person who only had the word cultivation in her head basically had zero survival ability. Everything depended on her subconscious instincts for survival. Seeing how she couldn't even feel the hunger in her stomach before, it was obvious how miserable she was now. Qinghuan flapped its wings and flew to the little master's shoulder. Its furry little body nudged her neck. Poor master, don't be afraid, Qinghuan will protect you. In the next second, the expressionless little master cruelly reached out and slapped it. With a pu sound, it was sent flying. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg that had been kicked away strenuously rolled back. Just as it touched Arbor's calf, she raised her small foot and made a kicking posture. Wait! Paw! Arbor couldn't even hear what Qinghuan said, so how could he hear the sound of an egg? This kick was even more ferocious. After being kicked against a tree, the Bloodfire Phoenix egg bounced back with a piu, and once again rolled to Qiao Mu's side with a thud. Master! Qinghuan simply transformed into her human form. With a messy bird's nest hair, she ran to Arbor's side in tears and grabbed her little hand. Stop kicking. This is a Bloodfire Phoenix egg. It can fight and use big moves. It has no problem going up the mountain or down the sea. Even if it's not good, we can roast it and eat it. Chapter 11:13. He knew that his little master couldn't hear and could only see him with her spiritual senses. Qinghuan hastily made all sorts of strange movements, jumping and hopping. In the end, he even fished out an egg and knocked it twice. Then, he peeled the shell out and handed it to his little master, pointing at her little mouth. Arbor expressionlessly reached out to take that small egg and took a bite. She, who didn't feel anything after eating, directly stuffed the entire egg into her mouth. Classmate Qinghuan's mouth twitched. Why did he feel that this master was even more adorable than before? Arbor turned to look at that Bloodfire Phoenix egg and walked toward it. A small hammer suddenly appeared in her hand. Qinghuan, who was following behind her, suddenly widened her eyes and hastily exclaimed, "You can't eat it now, you can't." The Bloodfire Phoenix egg rolling under the tree shook its round body for no reason and angrily jumped up and down, emitting a soft cry. "You woman! Stop right there!" Arbor's hand, which was holding the small hammer, was forcefully pulled back by Qinghuan, who rushed over afterwards. Qinghuan once again gestured with his hands and feet, using images to make Arbor understand that this Bloodfire Phoenix egg had to be roasted first before it could be eaten. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg jumped up and bumped into Qinghuan. "You damned bird, don't always slander me. You idiot, hurry up and retract the light on your body." Qinghuan shouted irritably. At this very moment, everyone in the entire Mystic Beast forest was rushing over in a flurry. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg's red light was too dazzling. Even a blind person could find its direction, let alone in such a dark and overgrown forest. This round of light was simply a guiding light. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg said weakly, "I can't retract it." Fraud. Qinghuan directly picked up that egg and stuffed it into Arbor's arms. Then, she pulled her and ran into the depths of the forest. "Hurry and go, little master. Many people are chasing after us." "Where are you running to?" A shout came from midair. The speed of the approaching person was rather fast. In the blink of an eye, the huge shadow covered the entire area. This was a middle-aged man with a dark face, a square mouth, and a wide nose. His black robe fluttered in the wind. Arbor hugged a bloodfire phoenix egg and looked at the middle-aged man expressionlessly. Qing Wan could feel the man's strength, but fortunately, he was alone. Thus, he hurriedly pushed his little master behind him and gestured for her to leave first. "Master, quickly take the bloodfire phoenix egg and leave first. I'll hold them off here." Arbor's eyes flickered. At this moment it was as if something was about to emerge from the depths of her mind, causing her to inadvertently frown. He pulled Qing Wan's arm and pulled it behind him. The little fellow looked up at the middle-aged man and suddenly threw the bloodfire phoenix egg. The corner of Qing Wan's mouth twitched. Then, she saw that in the next second, the little master turned around and gave a swift and happy flying kick, directly kicking the bloodfire phoenix egg towards the middle-aged man's face. Qing Wan. Actually, after such a long time, he should understand his little master very well. This kind of fraudulent thing was indeed something she would do. She was a little master who could even abandon Lady Holy Water for her own sect. Chapter 11:14. Little Master didn't like cute things at all, so naturally, she wouldn't have much affection for cute things in the depths of her heart. In her opinion, there was only a difference between those who were close and those who were distant. Those who were close should be protected, and those who were distant could be thrown away at any time. For example, this bloodfire phoenix egg right now was just a useless egg that could be thrown away at any time compared to Qing Wan. It was useless. The strangest thing was that middle-aged man. He actually thought that the phoenix egg that his little master threw over was a trap. Therefore, he roared in the air, and his supreme mystic energy pressure increased. His chest and abdomen were filled with swirling mystic energy, and with a boom, he threw down the bloodfire phoenix egg that flew to his side. Classmate Qing Wan suddenly felt some sympathy for this egg. Arbor didn't have any expression when she saw this. If she still had emotions, she would be furious. She wondered if this person was sick. Didn't he come for this oval thing? Why didn't he want it now? With such a pause, Arbor kicked the phoenix egg again and sent it flying. The middle-aged man kicked it again. The two people kicked back and forth 2 or 3 times. The phoenix egg couldn't bear it anymore and became angry. These two insignificant humans, what did they think it was? It was the one and only bloodfire phoenix in the world. When Arbor kicked the middle-aged man, a red light of spiritual energy burst out from the phoenix egg. No, it didn't even look like spiritual energy, but a higher level of power. This terrifying power directly wrapped around the middle-aged man, and with a loud bang, his entire body exploded, turning into ashes. He died without a burial place. This happened in just a breath's time. The crimson phoenix egg was infuriated, and it cursed the heavens, cursed the earth, and cursed Xiao Mu. It pounced over and fiercely smashed Xiao Mu's large head with a bounce. "You damn woman! What do you think this lord is? A bull? You can kick me here and there. This lord doesn't care about face." Arbor looked expressionlessly at the phoenix egg that was jumping in front of her and constantly hitting her little head. She didn't know what it was shouting about. "You bastard! You don't want this lord for this weak little green bird. Do you know who this lord is? I am an ancient bloodfire phoenix egg. This seat can only condense 1 egg every 10,000 years, an ancient bloodfire phoenix egg. This seat is Ashich. You idiot. Why don't you come and curry favor with me? What kind of expression is that?" Looking at the egg that was going crazy, Qing Wan kindly reminded it weakly. That egg. What the hell? My name is Blazing Blood. I am the blazing blood phoenix that only appears once every 10,000 years, blazing blood supreme. Great blood blaze god. Okay. Great god, great god. Qing Wan's mouth twitched. That, don't shout in front of Master. Her 5 senses are blocked. She can't hear or see anything. I can only use my spiritual sense to take a look. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg immediately let out a new round of angry roars, which were directed at Qing Wan. You stupid bird. Why didn't you say so earlier? Are you trying to anger me to death? Oh. Come over here and gesture to her. Ask her why she doesn't want me. Why? This phoenix egg was really going crazy. Qing Wan weakly moved to Arbor's side, tugged at her little master's sleeve, and gestured to her. Little master, the phoenix is asking you why you don't want her. Chapter 11:15. Arbor's 10,000-year expressionless face didn't have a single ripple of emotion. The phoenix egg became even angrier when it saw this. It jumped up and was about to smash her head, wishing it could wake her up. I'm a million times stronger than this stinky cyan bird. Why do you want him and not me? You idiot. You don't even know who I am, do you? Hurry up and tell me. Master, she can't speak. Why didn't you say so earlier? The phoenix egg's rage had reached a critical point. Soon after, it spread out its powerful divine sense and directly rushed into Arbor's consciousness. With a glance, it roared even more angrily, You damned woman, you actually already contracted with another profound beast? Don't you know that you humans can only contract with one profound beast in your entire life? You actually formed a contract with a weak Xian beast so casually. With your talent, you clearly have a better choice. The phoenix egg communicated with her mental energy through her conscious pool, so Qiao Mu actually heard it. However, she subconsciously disliked this guy's tone of voice very much. Even if her memories were temporarily blocked, she was still a protective little fellow in her bones. Even if she had contracted a weak profound beast, she didn't need this damned phoenix egg to point fingers at her from the side and make a fuss. Woman. Be grateful to me. Right now, let me help you remove the profound beast contract from before. The phoenix egg's voice was complacent. Unexpectedly, Arbor wasn't happy. With a move of her spiritual energy, she immediately communicated with it. You're not allowed to remove it. Even though she didn't know what this phoenix egg wanted to do, she subconsciously felt that it wasn't anything good. Why? The Bloodfire Phoenix egg was really angry. He had never seen such a person. A phoenix egg fell from the sky. Such a good opportunity was placed in front of her, and she actually didn't firmly grasp it. She would rather contract with a weak chicken than him, the great Bloodfire god. This made his heart extremely angry. Give me a reason. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg's voice was no longer soft and cute. Instead, it was filled with an invisible pressure, intensely pressuring Arbor. I don't want you. Qiao Mu impatiently used her mental energy to communicate with him. She took out the sleeping little white squirrel from her chest and stroked its soft fur. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg was so angry that it was about to burn itself into ashes. He suddenly laughed coldly. Unfortunately, you can't refuse. This damned human actually wants to reject me. He wanted to form a contract with her because of her talent. Instead of accepting his gift, he actually wanted to reject it. What a despicable human. On the phoenix egg's body, raging flames ignited. Those were the flames of his own anger. An extremely domineering and intimidating power seeped into the depths of Qiao Mu's conscious, not allowing her to refuse, and rushed towards that mental contract. In the blink of an eye, in the depths of his conscious, the 12 jade slips that had been bundled together suddenly opened up and formed a wall. The golden talisman jade tome activated its self-protective consciousness and blocked the phoenix egg's spiritual energy. At the same time, an angry consciousness rushed out of Arbor's consciousness and flew towards the phoenix egg's mental contract. Arbor only felt his consciousness surge like a raging wave. The two fiercely collided. His pupils shrank. In the next moment, because of the endless pain in his consciousness, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The green vine in her sleeve instinctively drilled out and attacked the phoenix egg that was attacking her consciousness. The bloodfire phoenix egg was stunned. Oh. Chapter 11:16. As a result, he couldn't react in time and was hit squarely by the vine whip. However, although he was still in the form of an egg, he was still a bloodfire phoenix egg after all, so this vine whip couldn't do anything to him. He just felt very aggrieved and face-slapped. The bloodfire deity discovered that this little girl really didn't like him from the bottom of her heart. It didn't seem like she was faking it. However, he was clearly the bloodfire deity, the incomparable bloodfire phoenix egg in the world. Who in this world didn't want him? Moreover, when he wanted to forcefully break the mental contract with that weak beast, he discovered that the weak beast wasn't simple at all. There was a powerful barrier in this little girl's conscience that controlled everything with absolute mental defense. He really didn't expect that this little girl, who looked to be only 14 or 15 years old, would have such a strange existence in her conscience. At this time, the second batch of people from Oni Prefecture arrived. Oni Prefecture's disciple, Gong Yang, led more than 50 disciples to Arbor's group. He couldn't help but exclaim when he saw her. "It's you." After so many years, this little girl's appearance was firmly imprinted in the depths of his mind. 2 years ago, the battle on the Holy Water sect's main peak nearly killed all the Oni Prefecture disciples on the spot. As Hong Jinchuan's eldest disciple and a level 12 mystic cultivator, Gong Yang followed Hong Jinchuan from beginning to end and led his team to trample all over the Holy Water sect's peaks. Before Arbor could open the Tianji treasure blueprint, Gong Yang collapsed from exhaustion. As a result, he escaped a calamity and didn't directly enjoy the Tianji treasure blueprint's attack. He only saw that little girl from the Holy Water sect madly flinging out a divine weapon and indiscriminately killing many people. Afterwards, he was thrown off the main peak by a huge force and completely fainted. When he fled back to Oni Prefecture's stronghold like a stray dog, he heard from others that his master, Hong Jinchuan's life tablet, had completely shattered. Of the more than 300 Oni Prefecture disciples who went with him to encircle the Holy Water sect, only a dozen or so escaped. Among them, there were many who were missing limbs and were mentally deranged. He didn't expect to meet this little girl from the Holy Water sect again in the Mystic Beast Forest 2 years later. A trace of fear and jealousy flashed in Gong Yang's eyes. He hurriedly approached a robust old man in his 60s and loudly said, "It's her, Consecrator Li. A remnant of the Holy Water sect. She might know the whereabouts of the sacred water. Also, she has a divine artifact, the Tianji treasure map." What? The old man named Consecrator Li was overjoyed when he heard the news. He looked at Arbor and laughed. That's really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. There is indeed a type of person in this world who is gifted and born with great luck. Look, there's the divine artifact Tianji treasure map and the sacred beast phoenix egg. Consecrator Li's gaze fell directly on the bloodfire phoenix egg beside Arbor's leg, and his eyes revealed a greedy light. "Wait until I catch you, little girl. I'll interrogate you to find out the whereabouts of the holy water." Consecrator Li reached out his hand to grab Arbor as soon as he finished speaking. However, he caught nothing but air. Xiao Mu's footsteps shifted extremely quickly, and she kicked that phoenix egg directly at the elder. She instinctively believed that this person also came to ask for the phoenix egg. That old man chattered so much earlier, but she didn't hear a single word. However, the Bloodfire Phoenix was very angry. Chapter 11:17. In his current situation, he was still an egg after all. Earlier, he had already used all his strength to finish off that middle-aged man in one move. But now, he was powerless to continue. The comical thing was that Punditly didn't dare to directly grab that phoenix egg emitting dense flames. He had just shaken out a net from his inner world and originally wanted to catch this egg first. Who knew that this egg was completely conscious? When it saw Punditly take out a net to catch it, it rolled back to Arbor's side as if the egg had grown legs. Punditly's aura sank, and he emitted a powerful mental pressure that crushed Arbor. Although Punditly's cultivation had been suppressed to level 1 spiritual cultivator and he didn't dare to easily use spiritual energy under the heavenly law's nose, his mystic conscious had already reached level 9. He expected that he could do whatever he wanted in the lower star domain. He originally thought that this attack would definitely crush that little girl until she vomited blood and collapsed on the ground. However, things didn't go as he wished. This mystic conscious attack didn't cause the slightest ripple, and the little girl before him was still perfectly fine. However, he didn't know that if Arbor's conscious hadn't been damaged and his spiritual consciousness hadn't been greatly weakened, that old man would have already been sent to some unknown country by the backlash. The old man let out a faint sound of bewilderment and changed to using the power of a level 1 spiritual cultivator to suppress Arbor. This little girl is a bit dangerous. Punditly, you mustn't lower your guard. This girl has the Tianji treasure map on her. Gong Yang was halfway through his words when he suddenly saw Arbor turn around and cast a glance in his direction. He only felt that the little girl's eyes, which were like icy pearls, seemed to flash with saber light and sword shadows. It was abnormally vicious and malicious. How could Gong Yang know that Arbor's memories had been blocked at this time? However, she seemed to subconsciously remember this person. Many years ago, she had repeatedly flipped through many people's life lanterns in the ancestral hall. She had seen all the Holy Water sect disciples' images before they died. If her memory still existed at this time, she would definitely remember that this Gong Yang in front of her was the person who made Fat Sister ruthlessly self-destruct back then. He had taken care of them on the first peak for 30 years like it was just one day. Fat Sis, who was responsible for all her daily needs, was gone because of this bastard. She stared at him coldly. Suddenly, she sent a wisp of her spiritual sense straight into the depths of Gong Yang's conscious. Compared to Reverendly, Gong Yang's conscious was far inferior. This ferocious spiritual sense attack directly knocked Gong Yang back 3 steps. His mind was in a daze. He held his head and howled a few times. Set up the formation. Consecrator Leech shouted with a sullen face. More than 50 Ani Prefecture disciples rushed out from behind Gong Yang. They drew their swords in unison and set up an inescapable sword formation. The disciples of Ani Prefecture had cultivated this sword formation for many years, and their coordination could be said to be quite good. When the entire sword formation was in operation, it was as if thousands of swords had formed a red sun, swaying back and forth around Arbor. Consecrator Leaf laughed sinisterly, and his powerful cultivation once again suppressed Arbor's figure. You can break her arms and legs, but don't take her life. This old man still wants to keep this little girl alive to inquire about the holy water's whereabouts. At this time, Gong Yang's pale face had also recovered some of his lucidity. He glared at Arbor and said resentfully, Consecratorly, I see that this little girl is a cultivation prodigy. If you use her body as a cultivation cauldron, Consecrator Lee's cultivation will definitely rise to another level. Consecrator Lee hadn't thought of this, and he couldn't help but laugh loudly at Gong Yang's reminder. Chapter 11:18. Gong Yang, your idea isn't bad. Consecrator Lee looked at Arbor, who was standing in the sword circle, with a sinister smile. He shouted to the disciples, "Remember, don't harm her life. Just break the tendons in her arms and legs. Taking a closer look, you are indeed a peerless beauty. To be able to become this old man's cultivation furnace, it can be considered your good fortune." Ha ha ha. As the old man spoke, he laughed complacently. But he didn't forget to release the strongest mystic energy a level 1 spirit master could release to control Arbor, who was inside the sword circle. This sword circle's advantage was in coordination. It gathered the cultivations of over 50 people, turning them into a whole, condensing them into a ball. In a short period of time, it would be difficult for Arbor to break out of this sword circle by herself. Moreover, her conscience had been injured just now. Right now, she only felt a faint headache. The best method was to find a secluded place to sit down and continue cultivating, recovering her spiritual sense. But the current situation didn't allow her to stop and rest. She could only continue fighting. Of course, deep in her heart, she didn't fear anyone. Moreover, although she didn't know what they were blabbering about, seeing their vulgar expressions, she knew it wasn't anything good. Suddenly, something flashed in the depths of her mind. As if suddenly realizing something, she took out a round bead from her pocket. The Duan family's core ravaging thunder. Gong Yang suddenly screamed. "Quickly dodge, this thing is incomparably powerful." Gong Yang had actually been paying attention to Arbor all this time because he was afraid she wouldn't take out the Tianji treasure blueprint at any time to kill them all. But after waiting for a while, the Tianji treasure blueprint didn't appear. Instead, a very dangerous core ravaging thunder came. Arbor didn't wait for him to finish screaming. She threw down a core ravaging thunder and instinctively stuck a teleportation talisman on herself and blew a wand. With a whoosh, she moved out of the sword circle and instantly appeared 1,000 meters away as fast as lightning. Consecrator Li's eyes widened. Before he could react, he heard a loud boom. The disciples of Ani Prefecture who were gathered together were in for a bad time. The disciples in the inner circle just happened to be at the core of the core ravaging thunder's explosion. They were blasted to pieces, missing limbs, and mangled flesh. The dozen or so people in the outer circle were slightly better off, but their faces and bodies were also covered in blood. They were blown away by the blast of the explosion. The might of the core ravaging thunder had alarmed all the Xian beasts in half of the forest. For a moment, a loud roar came from the depths of the forest. Previously, because of the birth of the Bloodfire Phoenix egg, all the beasts were dormant and didn't dare to move. Now that they saw that the Phoenix egg didn't move, the boss of the forest finally dared to roar in anger. Arbor and Qingwan had already turned around and ran away, leaving behind an egg who was hopping and chasing after them. He was so angry that he shouted, "Stop, you guys stop." Paw! A large, furry white-tailed suddenly attacked the Bloodfire Phoenix egg. If it wasn't for the fact that the Phoenix egg rolled quickly, it would have been hit by the tail. The tail missed and drew a white mark on the ground. Wherever it passed, a huge rock half the height of a person was directly smashed into pieces. Arbor stared blankly. She lowered her head and looked at her empty little hand. She turned her head to look at the snow-white little critter with an indescribable expression. If she was awake right now, she would definitely shout happily, "Chirp chirp, you're awake." However, she was currently looking at them expressionlessly. There wasn't the slightest fluctuation in her emotions. Chapter 11:19. It was during this pause that Ani Prefecture's consecrator Li caught up with an unsightly expression leading a group of defeated soldiers. With a wave of his hand, the remaining dozen or so Ani Prefecture's people surrounded Arbor. But everyone's faces were a bit pale as they looked at Arbor with trepidation. "Stinky girl. I really underestimated you." Consecrator Li shouted angrily, giving Gong Yang a meaningful look. Gong Yang nodded in understanding and secretly slid her feet twice. She suddenly reached out to grab Arbor's shoulder, a vicious glint flashing through her eyes. She intended to break Arbor's arm. Chirp! A white fluffy figure shot over like an arrow, angrily slapping Gong Yang's face with its little claws. With a pounce, Gong Yang screamed and raised his hand to cover his face. Fresh blood slid down from between his fingers. The little fat squirrel's movements were too fast. In just a breath's time, it succeeded in its surprise attack and clawed Gong Yang's eye blind. Consecrator Li cursed useless thing in his heart and directly rushed towards Arbor. He sneered and said, "Stinky girl, if you have the guts, try throwing another core-ravaging thunder." He wasn't a fool. He naturally knew that a great killing weapon like the core-ravaging thunder was an extremely rare item even in a concealed weapon aristocratic family. Confirming that Arbor couldn't possibly have a second core-ravaging thunder, Consecrator Li fearlessly struck out two palms in Arbor's direction, vigorous mystic energy suddenly encircling her. Gong Yang covered his face with one hand and screamed with a distorted expression, "Consecrator Li, quickly catch this stinky girl." Once Consecrator Li turned this stinky girl into a cultivation vessel, he would definitely make this girl beg for death in order to avenge the enmity of losing an eye today. This hateful girl actually dared to let a weak little mystic beast from God knows where scratch his eye blind. Gong Yang was so angry that he couldn't restrain himself. His entire body trembled in anger on the spot. Consecrator Li sneered. This old man's movements weren't slow. While using mystic energy to lock Arbor in place, he had already flashed in front of her and was about to grab her delicate little neck in the next second. Arbor suddenly raised his small hand. Consecrator Li was shocked, and he flew back like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Gong Yang, who was covering his eyes with one hand, also cried out in horror and suddenly retreated. The dozen or so people from the Ani prefecture who had encircled Xiao Mu on the outside also stumbled back a dozen or so steps, glaring at her in terror. Arbor looked at the crowd coldly and quietly put down his little hand. Consecrator Li saw that she didn't move for a long time and couldn't help but cry out in anger. This damned brat dared to trick him. The most hateful thing was that there were so many of them, but she actually succeeded in tricking them. How infuriating! Consecrator Li had a fierce look on his face. He jumped up and swept his strong old leg towards Arbor's feet. There was anger on his face. The dozen or so Ani prefecture's disciples once again surrounded him like wolves and tigers. Just at this time, Arbor once again raised her small hand and made a small action of throwing a core-ravaging thunder. Consecrator Li was greatly alarmed. He quickly rolled on the ground like a gourd and rolled to the side. He hurriedly opened his defensive barrier and prepared for a full defense. Those dozen or so Ani prefecture's disciples were so scared that their faces were pale. They rolled on the ground and loudly gasped for breath. They were so scared that they retreated again. However, after half a day, there was still no movement. Consecrator Li and the others were dumbfounded as they looked at the little girl who had played them for a fool. Chapter 11:20. Damn it! Pundit Li's face was already contorted. He was extremely furious. Being toyed with by this wretched girl time and time again, he only felt that his old face was burning hot and he was abnormally embarrassed. Gong Yang covered one of his eyes at the side and screamed urgently, "Pundit! Don't fall for her trick. This wretched girl is only scaring us. She definitely doesn't have a large firearm like the core-ravaging thunder on her. She doesn't have it. Don't hesitate, quickly catch her. Don't let her escape." Gong Yang urged from the side, "Don't forget that she's the only one who knows the whereabouts of the holy water. And the Tianji treasure map on her." Xiao Mu blinked, unable to understand why these people kept crowding around her. Logically speaking, they wanted that round egg, and she had already given it to them, but they were still surrounding her, not knowing what they wanted to do. So annoying that it was time for her to cultivate. It was better to kill all these people who were hindering her from cultivating. Otherwise, they would always be buzzing around her like dead flies. Arbor separated her palms, and a wave of spirit energy appeared on her body. Suddenly, Punditly and the rest were stunned to find that the soil on the ground rolled up the leaves, like a wriggling dragon. An earth-shattering layer of soil suddenly rose up from the ground, turning over and smashing down on everyone. Earth Spirit. Punditly was instantly stunned. With his eyesight, he could naturally tell at a glance that Arbor was using one of the 5 spirits, the Earth Spirit. This wretched girl had already comprehended the Earth Spirit at such a young age. Comprehending the Earth Spirit in a place like the lower star domain. Or could it be that she wasn't from the lower star domain at all? Punditly jumped in fright, and hurriedly retreated, trying to escape from this earth-shattering wall with lightning speed. Boom! The tumbling earth wall came crashing down, instantly drowning the dozen of Ani Prefecture's disciples who had lost their arms and legs and looked like arrows at the end of their flight. Gong Yang saw that the situation was not good, and turned to escape. Suddenly, something round rolled all the way to his feet. Gong Yang lowered his head to look, and his eyes suddenly bulged. He let out a miserable cry, and before he could escape, he was sent flying by a huge explosive force. This time, he happened to be in the center of the explosion of the core-ravaging thunder. How could he survive? His entire body was flung out and ruthlessly smashed into a broken old tree before tumbling to the ground with a boom. His upper body fell to the ground like a puppet, and he couldn't even close his eyes before he died. It was as if he was in complete disbelief that Xiao Mu, this little fellow, would actually carry a second core-ravaging thunder on her and casually throw it away. When Consecrator Li broke through the soil layer and jumped out with a loud shout, he saw Gong Yang's tragic death before he died. His broken body was hanging on half of a withered tree. It was very scary. Consecrator Li's scalp went numb. He turned around and saw that he was the only one left in the huge Ani Prefecture team. This little girl's battle prowess could not be judged based on her current cultivation. High Official Li already had thoughts of retreating. Between treasures and his life, Consecrator Li still cherished his life. The core-ravaging thunder on the little girl was especially terrifying. Compared to what he had seen before, it was even more powerful. It could actually blast Gong Yang, a level 12 mystic cultivator, into smithereens in an instant. How dehumanizing was this? Chapter 11:21. He didn't know if there was a third core-ravaging thunder on this damned girl. He couldn't afford to gamble. After the earth layer was turned over, Mr. Li's body was already covered in blood and he couldn't fight anymore. Since he already had the intention to retreat, he made a prompt decision to fly backwards. But after running for a few steps, he saw a snow-white squirrel-like little beast squatting there, eyeing him covetously. Its pair of small eyes were staring at him just like that. Consecrator Li immediately flew into a rage. With a roar, he kicked over, "Get out of my way." Damn it, even a weak little beast could casually block his way now. It was simply seeking its own death. Mr. Li's face was ugly. He was sure that his kick would definitely send this weak beast flying into the sky. He didn't care whether it was dead or alive. Anyway, if it dared to block his way, he would kill it all. However, the flying into the sky that he expected didn't happen. On the contrary, he clearly heard the crisp sound of his leg bones breaking. He immediately wailed and cold sweat dripped down his head. That kick just now was as if he had kicked a piece of iron plate, causing his leg bones to fracture. Don't joke around. He was a level 1 spiritual master. For someone with his cultivation level, his whole body had been trained to the point where it was impregnable. Not to mention kicking such a weak little beast, even if he was hit by the core ravaging thunder just now, it wouldn't be enough to make him so miserable. So to say that this little beast wasn't a weak beast. Could it be a spiritual beast? Or a divine beast? Consecrator Lee was flabbergasted as he stared at the little weak beast that was constantly stretching its body and suddenly grew to the size of a small hill in front of him. Dragging his broken old leg, he took a few steps back and swallowed his saliva in panic. Why did it turn out like this? What kind of monster was this? He had never seen a little squirrel that could grow to the size of a mountain. His eyes bulged and he subconsciously shrank back. When she turned her head, she saw the slender figure standing under the tree. Her evil guts welled up, and she pounced at Xiao Mu, her hands grabbing for Xiao Mu's slender neck. No, he must catch this damned girl in his hands to save his life. Bang! A white, furry tail suddenly covered the top of his head and swept over, instantly sending the old man, who was trying to grab Xiao Mu, flying. He crashed headfirst into a tree with a thud, and he tumbled to the ground with a cry of pain. The little white squirrel that had turned into the size of a small hill had a pair of small eyes that flashed with a cold light. It contained a deterrent force that Consecrator Lee could not understand. When he fell to the ground, he felt as if his internal organs had been flipped upside down by the tail. After enduring for 2 seconds, he instantly spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with bits of his internal organs. With this spray, his aura became much more dispirited, and he fell to the ground on the verge of death, leaving only a pair of frightened eyes staring at the giant beast in front of him. He was scared. No, he regretted it. Let me go. Mr. Lee coughed heavily and turned to look at Arbor. He said word by word, "This old man can, cough, serve you as my master." However, Arbor didn't know what he was mumbling about and didn't give him any response. The little white squirrel saw that its little master's face was incomparably cold and knew that its master didn't want to let this damned old man live. Chapter 11:22. Since that was the case, then he would take care of the old man. His long tail immediately swept over again. Don't be fooled by the large, furry tail that looked very gentle and warm when it landed on Consecrated Lee's body. Its might was comparable to that of a giant pillar reaching the heavens. He was instantly smashed into minced meat, and his head was smashed into pieces and buried in the ground. Roar! After the hill-sized squirrel lord finished dealing with the old man, he suddenly roared toward the depths of the forest. The dense pressure spread out, causing the group of small beasts that were originally restless and uneasy in the entire forest, intending to run to the base to attack the humans, to be so scared that they covered their heads and scurried away. One after another, they pitifully retreated back to their own small territories. So terrifying. Even that boss in the forest didn't dare to make a sound at this time. This dense and terrifying aura was clearly on par with the aura when the Bloodfire Phoenix egg was born. Terrifying. The appearance of a holy beast Bloodfire Phoenix egg in the Mystic Beast Forest was already frightening enough. Why did such a big shot appear now? Do Heping, Mu Boming, and the others, who were desperately rushing toward this end of the forest, were shaken by the little squirrel's roar halfway and tumbled to the ground on the spot. The ground of the entire Mystic Beast Forest was faintly trembling. The members of the group rolled all over the ground. They struggled to get up in a fluster and looked for trees, boulders, and other things to hide behind in their fright. Fuck! What was going on? The 2 earth-shattering explosions earlier had caused them to look for cover everywhere like quails. Now, there was the roar of a giant beast. Can't you just let me travel happily? After waiting for a while and discovering that there was nothing out of the ordinary in their surroundings, Mu Boming and Do Heping walked out from behind a large tree with strange expressions. When they turned around, they saw Qin Guelu and the eldest young Sir leading a group of people from the Qin estate rushing over at a moderate speed. They didn't appear to be in a sorry state and seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll along the way, which made Family Head Mu and Family Head Do's teeth ache. So everyone is here. Qin Xian looked at the people from the Do and Mu clans with a grin. With a jade-like beauty and a distinguished and elegant demeanor, this eldest young master merely stood there and immediately caused Miss Jilan of the Mu family to blush. Family Head Qin and young Master Qin don't seem to care much about the phoenix egg. Mu Boming tugged at the corner of his mouth with a fake smile. Upon seeing this, Qin Guelu chuckled and said, "It's not about caring or not. Although this phoenix egg is good, there is only one of it after all. Whether or not we can get it depends on fate. Let's just leave it to fate." Mu Boming's lips quivered, and then he laughed in mock embarrassment. Family Head Qin is indeed open-minded. Family Head, if you don't go over now, it'll be too late. Mu Zijuan reminded with a taut face. The red clouds in the sky that had been dyed red by the birth of the phoenix egg were slowly fading away. If he didn't rush over now, he wouldn't even be able to tell which direction the phoenix egg was in. Mu Boming hurriedly responded and nodded. "Let's go." Thus, he no longer argued with the Qin family and hurriedly led the group in the direction of the phoenix egg's flash. The people from the Do family naturally weren't willing to fall behind. Do Heping cupped his hands at Family Head Qin before hastily leading the group in pursuit. The two groups traversed the great mystic beast forest in tandem as they chased after each other. Chapter 11:23. The two teams traversed the great mystic beast forest one after the other in pursuit. After running for so long, they had truly exhausted some of their stamina, and some of the youths in the team with inferior cultivations had fallen behind. Qin Xian leisurely walked beside Family Head Qin, but a moment later, he asked with a smile, "Did you guys notice that the phoenix egg is currently moving forward?" After he mentioned it, everyone abruptly realized that the phoenix egg had shifted forward by at least several hundred meters from where they had seen it previously. Eldest young Sir Qin chuckled as he lightly struck his palm with his fist. "Say, do you guys think that the phoenix egg has grown legs and is purposely avoiding us?" Everyone, Eldest young Sir, your joke isn't funny at all. Yet Qin Guelu said with a smile, "Phoenix eggs are born with intelligence, so it's not impossible." Squeak squeak. Suddenly, a small mouse with sparse hair on its head popped out from the thicket, and its beady red eyes glanced at them. "Aw, a damned mouse." The startled Yang Fingyan's fingers moved slightly, and a burst of mystic energy pounced at that mouse. After a soft, zinged sound, the small mouse was struck by the mystic energy, and it rolled. With a kick of its hind legs, it fled through the thicket in terror. Qin Guelu creased his brows imperceptibly. Mu Jilan suddenly burst out in laughter, and her tone was not without mockery as she said, "You can't even kill a mouse." Yang Fingyan's small face flushed red under her veil. How could she have known that this mouse was so strange? She had clearly sent out a burst of level 4 mystic energy earlier, but a mouse actually slipped away. Mu Boming waved his hand with a smile and said, "Jilan, let's go." "Yes, Family Head." Mu Jilan pursed her lips and revealed a mocking smile again. When she passed by eldest young Sir Qin, she even snuck a glance at him. However, she didn't expect to meet eldest young Sir's smiling gaze. This was great. Her maiden heart thumped wildly, and she hurriedly followed Family Head Mu. On the side, Mu Zijuan saw this, and a sneer surfaced in his mind, "Love-struck fool." "Father." Suddenly, a voice called out. Do Heping hurriedly turned his head and saw his daughter, Do Fengqi, catching up from behind. "Phoenix Pool." "Father." Do Fengqi stomped her feet and ran forward with an aggrieved expression. Why are all of you here? It's a long story. Let's talk as we walk. Seeing that Mu Boming and the others had already set off, Do Heping hurriedly ran after them. At this time, the ground had returned to normal. However, just as the eldest young master had said, that hateful phoenix egg kept moving forward, as if it was deliberately avoiding everyone. Father, what's going on? What was that red light? The Bloodfire phoenix egg has descended. Now, all the powers have gathered here. Those who can come are all here. Don't worry about anything else. What's going on with you? Aren't you training in the secret realm? Don't mention it, father. Do Fengqi angrily stomped her feet. I was forcefully sent out. It's that woman's doing. Which woman? Who else could it be? The crown princess. What? Do Heping actually paused in shock before quickly running again. We'll talk about this later. Chapter 11:24. The urgent matter at hand was to see what was going on with the phoenix egg. Behind Do Heping, a young lady who resembled Do Fengqi in appearance but looked slightly younger couldn't resist pursing her lips and saying with a smile, so useless. We agreed on a month of training, but we were forcefully transported out in less than half a month. Do Fengyao, shut your mouth. Do Fengqi retorted with a cold expression, if you went, you might end up worse than me. All right. When Do Heping saw that these two sisters had started dog-eat-dog again, he could only separate them with a headache. Stop bickering, you two sisters. It's more important to take care of proper business right now. The group continued to run for a while as they spoke. The Do family and Mu family couldn't bear the enormous physical exhaustion, and more disciples fell behind. Do Heping and Mu Boming's expressions were slightly unsightly. In contrast, Qin Guelu looked nonchalant as he turned to the two of them and said with a smile, Family head Mu, family head Do, leave it to fate, leave it to fate. Pooh! Leave it to fate my ass. Do Heping and Mu Boming secretly cursed Qin Guelu, that old fox, in their hearts. Look at that red light. Mu Jilan suddenly raised her hand and pointed ahead. Everyone looked over and saw that the red light ahead had dimmed considerably, so faint that it was almost indistinguishable. Fuck, the phoenix egg couldn't have been picked up by someone, right? A Qin estate disciple realized the truth. Upon hearing this, young Feng Yan immediately said indignantly, impossible. It takes some time for a phoenix egg to recognize a master. It hasn't even been an hour since the phoenix egg descended into the world. Even contracting the phoenix egg won't be that fast. Qin Guelu nodded, and his gaze flickered as he glanced at eldest young Sir Qin beside him. The latter pursed his lips at him disinterestedly. Let's go over and take a look. That phoenix egg seems to have stopped. That's right. Although that red light in the forest had dimmed considerably, it finally stopped moving around crazily. Now that everyone had a clear target, they went over quickly. It didn't take long for them to find the source of the red light. Pushing aside the overgrown branches, they ran over to take a look. Everyone couldn't help but be startled. He saw a large piece of woodland, with only some debris and broken branches left. A deep pit was blasted in the middle, and the surrounding grass and trees were all razed to the ground. Thinking of the two huge tremors they heard before, everyone couldn't help but be speechless. After walking a little further, they saw a slender figure in plain clothes sitting with her back facing them. Looking at her back, she was actually a little girl. Everyone hurriedly quickened their pace and surrounded him, but they were also very careful to see if there were any traps under their feet. It's you. Do Fengqi circled to the front and saw the young lady's face. She couldn't help but cry out in alarm with a face full of resentment. Qin Guelu was also taken aback, and he involuntarily cupped his hands toward the seated figure. Miss Chiao. At this moment, Miss Chiao's body was covered in a faint red light, which was very dazzling. She was sitting in front of a group of people. When she heard the sound of footsteps, she didn't move at all. She didn't even bat an eyelid. Seeing this, Do Fengqi couldn't help but be furious. She rushed forward and pointed at Arbor, then said angrily, "All right. You threw us out of the mystic realm one by one. I thought you would be able to stay in there for a long time by yourself. I didn't expect you to come out as well. Is there any meaning in doing such a thankless task?" Fengqi. Second young Sir Do frowned slightly as he reprimanded. Chapter 11:25. Second brother. Do Fengqi stomped her feet in anger. "It's all because of her that I—" "Shut up." Second young Sir Do glared impatiently at his younger sister. On the side, his younger sister, Do Fengyao, couldn't help but chuckle. "What are you grumbling about when your skills are inferior to others?" Do Fengyao. All right. Do Heping was about to be angered to death by these two sisters. They were still fighting like dogs in front of a group of outsiders, making the Do family a laughingstock for no reason. Mu Boming's eyes flickered, and he walked forward and cupped his hands. "Miss Chiao, can you explain to us why you're covered in red light? Did you pick up a phoenix egg? Hand over the blood-fire phoenix egg." A trace of jealousy and hatred flitted through Yang Fengyan's eyes, and her eyes under the veil glared venomously at Arbor. She already knew that this crown princess who had parachuted into the Mo kingdom was the little maidservant who had previously stayed in their Qin estate and disfigured her face by whipping her. As a result, her face had yet to fully recover, so she could only wear a veil when she went out. She seemed to be called something like Mu Xiao Bao. That lowly slut who hooked up with men all day long. Not only did she not seduce eldest cousin and second cousin, she even hooked up with the crown prince now. Simply abominable. Right, hand over the phoenix egg. The Qin estate's disciples also stared fervently at the red light on Arbor's body, and they involuntarily took a few steps forward. "Withdraw." Eldest young Sir Qin swept a cold gaze over them, promptly sweeping away the impulsive emotions in their heads. Under the eldest young Sir's intimidating gaze, they shuddered and subconsciously retreated a few steps. It was only then that eldest young Sir Qin turned around and chuckled at the little stoic sitting cross-legged in front of everyone. He called out, "Xiao Bao, what are you doing sitting here by yourself?" Young Fengyan clenched her fists and abruptly took a step forward, pulling out her sword to stab at Arbor. "Cousin, don't waste your breath on this woman. Just make her hand over the phoenix egg." The eldest young Sir nimbly grabbed her arm, a trace of fury flitting through his eyes. "Who told you to attack?" "Ah, cousin. Cousin." Young Fengyan struggled with a pained expression on her face. Her wrist felt like it was about to break when he grabbed it. Seeing this, Mujilan's eyes flashed with a cold light. Her fingertips moved stealthily and an attack talisman shot towards Arbor. Eldest young Sir Qin hadn't expected that Mujilan would also suddenly make a move. Unable to stop her in time, the talisman flashed by at an extraordinarily fast speed. He watched as the attack talisman flew towards Arbor, and his heart skipped a beat. Bang! Arbor's figure suddenly disappeared, and Mujilan's attack talisman missed. When everyone looked closely, they saw that Arbor's expression hadn't changed, and his posture hadn't changed at all. He had only moved a little, and now he was 5 feet away from them. Damn it! Mujilan was enraged, and 2 talismans swiftly darted out between her fingers. Just as she was about to release them, eldest young Sir Qin flicked his sleeve, causing her to stagger. "What are you doing?" Qin Xian glanced at Mujilan in dissatisfaction. Suddenly, they heard a gust of wind, and two Doe family disciples simultaneously pounced towards Arbor, greed flickering in their eyes. Hand over the phoenix egg. Those two long swords intertwined to form a sword shadow and slashed towards Arbor. Bang! Arbor's figure once again moved 5 feet away. Chapter 11:26. This time, Mu Boming finally saw it clearly, and his expression involuntarily changed as he exclaimed in shock, "It's an illusion talisman matrix." Arbor herself wasn't here at all, so it was useless no matter how they tried to kill her. In the end, they were completely fooled by a talisman matrix. Everyone's complexions were either green or white, extremely unsightly. Mu Boming suddenly shouted loudly, "The illusion talisman matrix can't be too far away from the main body. She's nearby." After saying this, he charged into the nearby forest. Qin Xian followed closely behind and sneered, "Family head Mu, you're already so old, why are you still so angry?" Mu Boming turned a deaf ear to him, and his figure flitted past. Everyone started a carpet search nearby, and sure enough, they discovered Arbor's main body behind a concealed thicket in less than half an hour. At this moment, she was standing behind a patch of charred dead wood. She was dressed in plain clothes and was cold and cheerless. She was expressionless, and her gaze was even extremely icy as she stared at them. What was exciting was that a layer of faint red light also floated around her main body, enveloping her within. It was as if her entire body was enveloped by a wisp of bright and enchanting flame. "It's a phoenix egg." "A bloodfire phoenix egg," a Mu family disciple exclaimed excitedly. Sure enough, that round phoenix egg was squatting steadily next to Arbor. Mu Zijuan, who had always been relatively calm, couldn't keep his composure this time. His breathing stopped, and he clenched his fists as he stepped forward and said, "The phoenix egg is right here. If you want it, then rely on your own abilities." Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't help but burst into laughter. "What's the use of relying on your own abilities? Don't tell me you can strip someone else of their spiritual contract and take the phoenix egg back from a new contract. In your dreams, it still depends on whether the phoenix egg itself is willing or not." Spiritual contract. Everyone was startled, and only then did they clearly see Arbor's current appearance. Not only was her body enveloped by a faint red light, there was even a cluster of burning flames lightly leaping about in the center of her forehead. A mystic beast contract imprint. Damn it, we were a step too late. Miss Chiao has already contracted with the phoenix egg. Ah! My phoenix egg, you actually contracted my bloodfire phoenix egg. Young Feng Yen screamed, unable to control herself. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist laughing again, and his thin lips curled up as he glanced at young Feng Yen with slight mockery. "Younger cousin, I remember that you are merely a level 4 mystic cultivator right now. How could there be a contract with a profound beast? You're still far from being able to form a contract." Young Feng Yen blushed under the veil. She was planning to shamelessly beg the patriarch to leave the phoenix egg for her. With her aptitude, she would definitely be able to break through to become a level 10 mystic cultivator in less than 10 years. At that time, wouldn't she be able to form a contract with the phoenix egg? The young master could not be bothered with his ridiculous cousin who was talking to herself. He turned to Arbor and said, "Xiao Bao, is it because the contract is not completed yet? Is that why you haven't left yet?" Xiao Mu coldly looked at them. Do Fengqi said angrily, "What kind of look is that? Do you believe that I'll dig out your eyeballs?" Ever since she was forcefully transported out of the mystic realm, Do Fengqi had been stifling her anger until now. Now that she saw Arbor, it truly was both old and new grudges surfacing in her heart. Without waiting for family head Do to shout for her to stop, Do Fengqi pounced over and drew her sword to stab straight at Arbor. Chapter 1127. Bitch, who told you to make me lose everything in the secret realm? Bang! Arbor didn't seem to move, but her foot had already ruthlessly kicked Do Fengqi's stomach. Do Fengqi couldn't even get close to the corner of her clothes before she was swiftly sent flying. She crashed heavily into a nearby tree and spat out a mouthful of blood from the severe internal injuries. Everyone turned pale with fright, and they all looked at Arbor as if they were looking at a monster. Do Fengqi was a level 8 mystic cultivator at any rate, but she couldn't even take a single blow from the crown princess. Why? It wasn't that Do Fengqi was too weak, but that the crown princess was too strong. They didn't expect that after not seeing her for several days, the crown princess's cultivation would actually skyrocket to this extent. At this time, Arbor suddenly moved. Like a killing Buddha carved from jade, she directly attacked the 2 Do family disciples standing in front of her. With 2 snaps, those 2 Do family disciples hadn't even recovered their wits when their heads already tilted slightly and hung in Arbor's hands. Ah! Mujilan screamed in horror. Seeing Arbor's ice-bead-like eyes turn to her and lock onto her, she couldn't help but shriek in fright and terror. Her terrifying and ice-cold gaze was like a killing machine, completely devoid of any humanity. Qin Xian already saw Arbor's abnormality. She was usually cold and expressionless, but she definitely wouldn't be like this, where she didn't recognize her own family and wanted to kill everyone she saw. Could it be that she suffered from qi deviation while cultivating? Qin Xian was alarmed, and he rushed towards Arbor. Yang Fengyan shrieked behind him, "Cousin, what are you going over there for?" "Cousin, that woman is a lunatic." "Xiao Bao, how are you?" "Calm down first." Qin Xian had just spoken when he saw the little girl aiming a punch at his chest. This punch clearly already had the strength of a 13th level cultivation base. When the punch came down, Qin Xian's robes were blown back by a strong current of air. He couldn't take it head-on and didn't want to retaliate, so he could only dodge. "Cousin!" Young Fengyan let out a dying scream. Xiao Mu's unfeeling eyes abruptly flitted in her direction. As soon as Yang Fengyan met Arbor's extremely cold eyes, she was like a duck that had its voice cut off. Her screams came to an abrupt end. What a terrifying gaze. Was that a human's gaze? Arbor was clearly like a moving jade statue. It was a jade statue filled with a terrifying aura that could kill people at any time. After rushing into the crowd, it took the lives of several disciples. "Everyone, quickly disperse." Second young Master Do shouted in alarm. "Miss Chow must have gone mad from cultivating. He's probably not in his right mind and won't be able to recognize us. Everyone, don't fight her head on. Spread out, don't move, don't move." Hearing this, all the disciples present slowed down their footsteps. Their bodies stiffened as they subconsciously slowed down their breathing. Arbor's footsteps moved slightly, and he slowly walked past the scattered group of disciples. When he arrived in front of a disciple whose eyes were wide open and whose body was stiff, he was about to walk over. That disciple suddenly punched the back of his head. "Go to hell." Second young Master Do's pupils shrank slightly. However, Xiao Mu abruptly turned around and also threw a punch behind her. Her fair and tender hand directly collided with that disciple's fist. The fist wind traveled up the disciple's arm, and suddenly, the disciple's arm bone was pulverized into powder.
Chapter 1128. That seemingly pink and tender little fist was actually immensely powerful. Following the momentum, it smashed into the disciple's face, causing it to cave in and completely deform. That disciple didn't even have time to cry out before he fell heavily to the ground and stopped breathing. The surrounding disciples were all frightened by her terrifying technique, and they all cried out in alarm as they hastily broke into a run. Arbor's figure flitted past, and she picked up the disciples who were about to make a move like little chicks. She exerted force from her fingertips, and several cracking sounds were heard. Those people's necks all drooped, and they didn't make another sound. "Don't move." Second young Master Do was simply infuriated to death by this group of brainless fellows. He told them not to move, but they still insisted on moving. How mentally tiring was it to have to lead a group of pig teammates? Didn't they realize that Miss Chiao didn't react at all when she saw them at the beginning? It was only because one of them attacked her that she started to flip out. In other words, as long as they didn't move, she should calm down. After second young Master Do finished shouting, no one dared to move carelessly in the slightest. Mu Zhilan was so frightened that she cried. Her body trembled as tears streamed down her face, and she stared fixedly at Arbor, who flashed past her. She only dared to slow her breathing and sob softly when she saw that she had gone a bit further away. Within the range of Arbor's spiritual perception, there were no longer any enemies obstructing her cultivation. All she saw in her spiritual perception were chunks of wooden dummies, and no one would make a fuss and disturb her. Thus, this little fellow turned around and didn't bother to pay them any more attention. Her plain-colored figure flashed and disappeared into the flowers and trees. When the phoenix egg beside her saw this, it also skipped and followed. Little Bao. Eldest young Master Qin was anxious and was about to chase after her when Yang Fengyan desperately blocked him and shrieked, "Cousin, what are you doing? You want to follow this murderous demoness? She killed so many of our Qin family's disciples just now." Before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the trees in front of them rustled, and a large furry head suddenly popped out from within. "Rat!" Yang Fengyan suddenly shrieked, her eyes wide open. A rat that looked like a hill, ah! Whoever saw such a rugged-looking mouse? Blind! Mu Zijuan coldly shouted, "It's clearly a large squirrel." As he spoke, the large squirrel's fluffy white tail suddenly swept over, and with a rumble, everyone was shocked and retreated several dozen feet. Seeing that no one was following it, the big squirrel gave them a warning glare, turned around, and moved its fat butt away, huffing and puffing. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Could it be that it's Miss Chiao's Xian beast? A Do family disciple asked weakly. Tisk, impossible. Where did she get so many profound beasts? Mu Zhilan raged, doesn't she already have the divine bird Qinghuan? Now, he even picked up a phoenix egg to form a contract with. But Miss Chiao can draw summoning talismans. Seventh Master Mu also said that the divine bird Qinghuan was summoned by Miss Chiao. That's true. Mu Zhilan clenched her fists. What's so great about a summoning talisman? Our Mu family also has a summoning talisman. Perhaps it can summon a rare sacred beast. At the mention of the Mu family's only summoning talisman, family head Mu's expression looked like he had stepped on dog poop. Because he discovered that the Mu family's precious summoning talisman had disappeared.
Chapter 1129. Of course, Mu Boming simply didn't know that his good daughter Mu Qianqian had taken this family treasure's summoning talisman and offered it to Master Black Cat. After Black Cat died in Nimpan Tower, this Mu family's soul summoning talisman also vanished into thin air. After Arbor distanced itself from the crowd, it searched for a suitable place to cultivate as usual. Wherever Arbor went, this egg would hop there. As it hopped, it would chatter non-stop. What are you angry for? I'm the one who should be angry. I, the great Bloodfire deity, want a contract with you. Ah. You're still being picky and picky. I really don't know where you monster came from. How can there be someone like you in this world? Qinghuan walked next to this egg and said expressionlessly, "Don't grumble anymore. Master doesn't even recognize me in Little Chirpy, let alone a strange egg like you." What egg? This one is the great Bloodfire deity, Qi Shui. Qinghuan speechlessly swept a glance at this egg that would go crazy from time to time. Where exactly did you pop out from? Underground. Ah. This one has been dormant for so many years and finally woke up. I didn't expect that the other person wouldn't be willing to choose me as master. You really popped out from a rock? Qinghuan asked curiously. If Eggy had eyes, it would definitely glare fiercely at Qinghuan. If it wasn't for the fact that when it infiltrated the little lady's conscious and clashed with the damn squirrel's mental contract, it might not have been able to successfully contract with this damn child. But speaking of which, this master of his really was an oddball. Humans usually could only have one contract beast in their lifetime, but her mental strength was enough to contract two. Moreover, he and that white squirrel weren't ordinary mystic beasts. If a normal person's mental conscious encountered a saint-level contract beast, they would have long exploded and died, or become an idiot from the backlash of failing to contract. But she didn't. It was just that when the two sacred beasts' mental strengths clashed in her conscious, it caused a certain amount of damage to her conscious. This was also quite strange, all right. At that time, the Bloodfire Phoenix egg thought that the little squirrel was just a weak beast and that it could expel it from Arbor's conscious with just a wave of its spiritual power. However, he didn't expect the other party to be evenly matched with him. Two powerful psychic powers flipped around in Arbor's conscious at the same time. If it was anyone else, they would have been foaming at the mouth and killed on the spot. Fortunately, she had the golden talisman Jade Tome to protect her in Arbor, which allowed her to survive the calamity. The phoenix egg jumped a little and noticed that there were extremely loud footsteps coming from behind it. He hurriedly jumped into Qinghuan's arms and said in a proud voice, "This lord is tired, I'll allow you to carry this lord." Qinghuan. She suddenly had an impulse to grab the hammer in her master's hand and smash this broken egg to death. Admit it if you're a coward. He was really asking for a beating with that arrogant look on his face. Squeak, squeak, squeak. A hairless rat suddenly crawled out from Arbor's foot. No sooner said than done, Arbor didn't even blink. Out of instinct, it instantly pierced through the rat's head with an ice blade. Qinghuan shook its body and muttered to itself, "It can't be a mutated zombie rat or something like that, right?" He felt that his master seemed to be abnormally sensitive to zombies and even mutated zombie beasts. If it was an ordinary rat, his master might not even look at it. But now... Squeak, squeak, squeak. Suddenly, 4 or 5 rats crawled out from the bushes. Xiao Mu sent several ice blades flying over with an abnormally fast swish. Chapter 1130. After piercing those rats' heads at the same time, Arbor couldn't delay any longer and immediately ran into the depths of the forest instinctively. Seeing her abnormal movements, Qinghuan hastily dashed after her. Seeing this, the little white squirrel turned into a furry ball with a whoosh and hopped onto Qinghuan's shoulder. Its little paw even attempted to kick down the egg in Qinghuan's arms. Qinghuan, these two guys really were dog-eat-dog things. Qinghuan hurriedly pushed aside Chirpy's little paw and comforted, "All right, this egg is our partner in the future. Don't hit it yet. Let's go see what little master discovered." "Bah! We're not partners," two Tsundere voices indignantly said at the same time. Qinghuan didn't succeed in being the peacemaker, so it simply couldn't be bothered with them. Hugging the egg and carrying the little squirrel, it chased after Arbor in front of it, shuttling back and forth in the forest. After running for a few minutes, Qinghuan also stopped when it saw its little master stop in front of it. When it focused its eyes, it immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. There were probably over 10,000 rats densely packed ahead, and they were currently attacking Mu Boming, Do Heping, and the others together. The people from the Qin estate had long disappeared, but 2 unfamiliar teams appeared next to Mu Boming and the others. Qinghuan leaped in front of its little master. "Master, don't go over. Arbor also didn't have any intention of going over. She stepped on a tree branch and looked down at the people besieged by the rats from above. If there were a few blind little mice squeaking and running towards her, she would take care of them. Her movements were fast and ruthless, not giving anything a chance to get close to her. Mu Boming, who was fighting a hard battle with the rats below, almost fainted from anger when he looked up. He couldn't help but roar at the branch, "Miss Chow, can you have your summoned beast come down and fight?" Miss Chow squatted on the branch and looked at them expressionlessly. Her appearance was truly cold and heartless. Mu Boming was so angry that a mouthful of blood welled up in his heart. Mu Jilan could not help but say angrily, "Patriarch, why are you wasting words with her? How could someone like her be willing to save us so easily? Drive the rat swarm over there." Mu Zijuan angrily kicked a disciple beside him. "Are you an idiot? I'm telling you to surround them. Don't let the rats open a path." Currently, Mu Boming, Do Heping, and the others were at the center of the circle, and there were many Do clan and Mu clan disciples standing around them. The disciple who'd been kicked by Mu Zijuan had already felt his limbs go limp from fighting with the rat horde. After being kicked by Mu Zijuan again, he was furious and unwilling to accept this outcome. In his unstable state of mind, several rats pounced on him and bit him, causing him to cry out in pain. He lost his footing and immediately fell down. This fall was fatal on the spot. He was immediately dragged into the group of rats by dozens of large rats that pounced on him. Within a breath's time, he was completely devoured. When Mu Jilan saw this, she shuddered fiercely and wailed, "What do we do, Patriarch?" Mu Boming's head also exploded. Looking at the rat swarm that blotted out the sky, he gritted his teeth and said angrily, "Summon the flying mystic beasts. We're withdrawing." Mu Jilan's eyes widened. "But Patriarch, there are broken trees everywhere here, and the branches are intertwined. It's impossible for us to fly." Chapter 1131. We have to fly even if we can't. Mu Boming roared angrily and immediately summoned his flying steed. However, that big fellow bumped into a broken branch as soon as it came out. It flapped its wings twice but actually didn't fly up. Instead, it was scraped by all kinds of overgrown branches, almost falling crookedly into the zombie rat swarm and getting bitten by the rats. Mu Boming was so frightened that he promptly put away his flying mystic beast. His head was drenched in cold sweat as he shouted, "I really can't summon it. Family head Mu, if this continues, we'll quickly exhaust our physical strength and become the rat swarm's dinner," a middle-aged man said indifferently. He had a scholar's headscarf wrapped around his head, making him look rather scholarly. He held an iron dagger axe that was neither long nor short, but his movements were swift and decisive. With a swing of the dagger axe, he could get rid of a dozen or so large rats. "Your Excellency High Priest, then what method do you have to help us escape?" It turned out that after the Qin Estates people left, Mu Boming and Do Heping's teams encountered people from Siming Manor and Beijing Manor. This scholar was none other than Siming Manor's renowned high priest. He was the one who had divined the abnormal changes in the heavens this time and then announced it to the world. A woman covered in a white veil stood next to the high priest. She was Siming Manor's eldest heavenly daughter, and her entire body emitted an awe-inspiring and inviolable heavenly daughter aura. She couldn't help but furrow her curved brows at these filthy rats, and she grumpily said, "It's our bad luck to encounter you people." Previously, their two great manors' journey had been smooth and unhindered, but they didn't expect to encounter this rat swarm as soon as they encountered Do Heping and Mu Boming's group. They didn't even know if this rat swarm was charging at them. Mu Boming suffered in silence, but he didn't dare to offend the eldest heavenly daughter, so he could only turn around and look at the high priest. "Your Excellency High Priest, how about we try a fire attack?" The high priest shook his head. Normal fire can't burn in this damp mystic beast forest at all. Unless there's a deep crater like the one we saw before caused by a large firearm explosion. Heartwarming raised his head to look at Arbor, who was squatting on the tree branch, and the corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. Miss Chow was sitting on a tree branch that was as thick as an arm. Beside her was a young and handsome man who was crouching, holding a phoenix egg. His two hands were holding a jar of plums and some unknown snacks, and he was feeding her. Qingwan always felt that his little master was really miserable during this period of time. Being half-starved every day, he had lost a lot of weight. If her stomach didn't rumble, she wouldn't even remember to eat. If her stomach rumbled, she wouldn't even know to eat. The previous little master was someone who enjoyed delicacies and fruits every day. This period of time was really too miserable. Even if he ate something, it was like chewing wax. He couldn't taste anything at all. Taking advantage of the idle time, Qingwan took out the snacks she had hidden and fed them to her little master. Miss Chow, you have a firearm on you, right? Heartwarming forcefully suppressed his belly full of irritation and tugged the corner of his mouth at Xiao Mu with a fake smile. There was no doubt that the crater caused by the large firearm explosion was definitely this Miss Chow's doing. She was the only one who had a good relationship with that Duan family's young sir, so he might have given her the firearm. That's right, it was her. When we left the Mo Kingdom capital for the Mystic Realm. Chapter 1132. I saw it when the Duan family's Duan Yu gave her a box of concealed weapons. Do Fengqi shouted agitatedly, quickly take it out and throw it. Second young master Do furrowed his brows and forcefully tugged at his sister's arm. Do Fengyao couldn't resist snickering. Are you on good terms with her? Why should she help you? Do Fengqi angrily turned to glare at her. Shouldn't we help each other at a time like this and force these zombie rats to retreat first? Haha, I don't think Miss Chow is a righteous person. Look at her squatting there. Does she have the slightest intention of helping us? In my opinion, it's completely hopeless. Qingwan, who was currently feeding the little girl, turned back to glance at them and chuckled. You two don't need to boast and sing to goad my little master into action. Because it's useless. Little master simply can't hear what you fools are saying. Do Fengqi was taken aback and glanced at Do Fengyao. Seeing the latter's flushed face, she realized that the cyan-clothed man had truly guessed Do Fengyao's thoughts. As it turned out, she was purposely cursing at her earlier to goad Arbor into action. The leader of Beijing Manor was called Axan Yu, and she was supposedly the future young madam of Beijing Manor. She was in her early 20s and had a slender figure. Her looks could also be considered above average. At this time, she couldn't help but frown when she heard this. She turned to a maidservant beside her and said, "Who knows where that girl Bao Yan ran off to? We should be more careful later and split up if there's a chance." "Yes, Mississippi," that maidservant nodded. Bao Yan disappeared as soon as she entered the mystic beast forest. Don't bother with her. Our top priority is to escape first. As she said this, she looked up at Arbor, who was watching from a branch, and couldn't resist asking softly, "Miss, who is that person?" "Is it as family head Do said, that she has some large firearm on her? If so, why didn't she do anything when family head Do said that? She's truly ruthless." Xan Yu shook her head. Although she didn't have much contact with this girl, judging from the tone the Do family and Mu family members spoke to her, their relationship didn't seem to be good. It was their business whether they wanted to help or not. How could they force it? At this time, a wave of strange movements suddenly struck. The group of corpse rats seemed to have gone mad, launching a more violent attack than before, desperately pouncing on the crowd. A portion of the zombie rats that had split off from the group of zombie rats even made a beeline for Chow Moo's tree and attacked its roots. Dozens of rats gnawed at the tree that Arbor was sitting on. The tree shook back and forth and looked like it was about to collapse. Arbor suddenly jumped up and took the profound artifact bow from his back. He shot several arrows in succession. Each arrow could almost penetrate 2 or 3 rats. The strength was very fierce. After killing that small group of blind rats that attacked her, Chow Moo flew up and landed on another tree. Unexpectedly, a slender and fair arm suddenly came out from behind the tree and grabbed her wrist. The aura coming from behind was very strong. With a slight twist, he grabbed Arbor's arm and jumped to the top of a tree. With his other hand, he pulled out a dagger and stabbed toward her neck artery. Miss Chiao was expressionless. However, the people below were extremely alarmed. That dagger was about to stab her, but Miss Chiao was indifferent. Chapter 1133. A gigantic long tail shot out from behind the person who had captured Chow Moo and smashed straight at the attacker's back. Bam! A huge sound rang out. The Raksha princess raised her saber and killed a small rat that darted out from Arbor's neck. She picked up Arbor and swiftly leaped up, lightly jumping onto a nearby tree. As it turned out, she had stabbed a large rat beside Arbor's neck. Afterward, the Raksha princess actually turned around and smiled benevolently at Arbor. Anxious, Qing Wan flew forward and angrily asked, "What are you doing?" Princess Luosha's lips curled up ever so slightly, and she smiled almost imperceptibly. She had concealed her aura and secretly followed Arbor, so she had long sensed her abnormality. This little fellow was like a clown, looking for places to cultivate everywhere. As long as she didn't reveal killing intent and didn't obstruct her cultivation, she could definitely become good friends with her. The reason why she was so ruthless to her in the beginning was most likely because she had stepped into her array when she was chasing Sikong Fuling and delayed her cultivation. This child was probably either dumb or stupid, the Raksha princess secretly thought. The Raksha princess snapped her fingers, and a huge wave of rats rushed toward Qing Wan. Seeing that the two beasts of Arbor were surrounded by rats, a dark glint flitted across the Raksha princess's eyes. She directly pulled Arbor through the forest and headed in a predetermined direction. Qing Wan swept away a huge wave of rats with a slap and tucked the egg under her armpit with her left arm. She immediately darted up a tree and called out to Chirpy, who was happily beating the rats, and hurriedly chased after her master. Eggy, fuck, 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 fuck. Sir Chishua angrily roared, "You damn green bird, don't clip me. Put me down." Oh. This posture was simply humiliating the country and didn't have the slightest bit of a holy beast's dignity. Whoa. Freaking wait until I recover my true phoenix body, I'll destroy you in a matter of minutes. Qing Wan didn't care so much and directly scurried up Chirpy's mountain-like body with the egg. She anxiously pointed ahead. Hurry and chase. The fat squirrel took its chubby steps as it shuttled through the forest with great agility. At this moment, Princess Luosha brought Arbor to a place with dense mystic energy and pointed ahead. His meaning was very clear. Cultivate. When you reach a critical juncture in your cultivation, this old lady will take your dog life. What a joke. Of course she had to get back at them. Could it be that he had given this wretched lass a beating for nothing? Moreover, she felt that the wretched girl must have some hidden secrets. Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to be so strong that a single mental attack could make her flee in defeat. This wretched girl's current realm was at most at the 13th level, but her spiritual sense was several levels higher than his. That was why he was able to defeat her in one strike. Princess Luosha didn't believe that he didn't have any secrets. Xiao Mu glanced at her surroundings. Needless to say, the place that Princess Luosha chose was really not bad. The mystic energy in the surroundings was even denser than the stream that Sikong Fuling found previously. Arbor nodded satisfactorily and pattered to the tree in front to sit down. As expected, he entered into a cultivation state as though there was no one around. Princess Luosha was a little anxious, afraid that those cute little rats couldn't stop Arbor's beasts. Seeing that Arbor had closed his eyes to cultivate for a short while, she quietly approached and fished out a box of medicinal powder from her sleeve. Chapter 1134. She couldn't wait any longer. She seemed to have heard the beasts chasing after her. The Raksha princess's eyes flickered. One blue wand was enough to make her struggle, not to mention a fat squirrel whose level couldn't be determined. She definitely wasn't their match. Time was fleeting, so she had to grasp it well. The Raksha princess was just about to open the powder box and blow a mouthful of powder onto Arbor's little face. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the side and firmly grasped her wrist. The Raksha princess's eyes widened. "It's you." As for the rats, they didn't retreat after Blue Wan and the other beasts left. Instead, they surrounded and tore at the humans even more fearlessly. The high priest of Siming Manor had an ugly expression on his face, and his fists that were pressed against the side of his robe clenched slightly. A metal spear picked up a dozen rats, and before the latter could approach, he activated a defensive barrier to reinforce his defenses. Then, he shouted, "Everyone, let's fight and retreat at the same time. Let's see if we can leave this place." At this moment, many disciples of the Do and Mu families were already panicking. They saw several of their companions being dragged in and torn to pieces by the rats. The fear in their hearts was about to completely ignite. Why? At the last moment of their lives, they wanted ordinary disciples like them to protect those people in the center and use their own lives to protect them. They wanted their own lives too. Several disciples of the Do and Mu families completely lost their rationality in their panic and anger. They no longer listened to the Mu and Do family heads' commands and directly wanted to run away from the rat swarm. But as soon as they left the group, they were swallowed by the crazily surging rat swarm. Just as everyone was shrouded in despair, a dazzling and enchanting golden red light suddenly appeared above their heads, burning like a red sun. It directly crashed down from the sky above the forest, breaking through the heavy gray fog above the forest and the pitch-black mess of dead trees and broken branches. The dazzling red sun-like light just happened to crash into the zombie rat swarm, smashing a wheel-sized shallow hole in the muddy ground covered with rotten leaves. With such an impact, more than half of the zombie rats were blown away. The remaining 500 rats were like stray dogs, fleeing into the depths of the jungle in a panic. "Don't chase." Mu Boming grabbed Mu Zijuan beside him and shook his head while panting. "These should be mutated zombie rats. The remaining several hundred rats are nothing to be afraid of. After all, the combat power of these corpse rats was very weak, and a single slap could kill them." He was afraid that thousands of them would gather together. Even an elephant could be killed by a swarm of ants, not to mention so many mutant zombie rats. Do Heping also hurriedly heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did he turn his head to look at the person who had come. With one look, he could not help but be dumbfounded. Your Highness the Crown Prince." Everyone looked at the Crown Prince who had suddenly descended from the sky. Dumbfounded, he raised his head to look at the big hole above him, only to see a gray mist flowing out of the hole again. The gray fog above the mystic beast forest was poisonous, and it was impossible for any flying mystic beast to continue flying in this fog for more than 15 minutes. Yet the Crown Prince had directly flown in from the forest's periphery, breaking through the overgrown branches from above, and landed here. This kind of power was truly a bit savage. "Have you seen the Crown Princess?" Mo Lien coldly swept her gaze over everyone as she asked. "Oh. Chapter 1135. The hearts of Do Heping and the others instantly sank with a thump. They were done for. Previously, they had even teamed up to snatch the phoenix egg on the crown princess. When they made their move, how could they have imagined that the crown prince, who loved his wife as much as his life, would rush to the mystic beast forest from the Mo kingdom capital? The crown prince's aura was so powerful that they didn't dare to defy him in the slightest, much less tell him the details. When Prince Mo saw that no one uttered a word and that everyone's eyes were flickering with uncertainty, the uneasiness in his heart grew increasingly intense. Could it be that you people have teamed up to bully the crown princess? As soon as he finished speaking, the pressure on Prince Mo's body surfaced bit by bit, as if about to erupt in the next moment. No, no. How would we dare? Do Heping hurriedly sent a look to a disciple beside him. The latter submissively stepped forward and whispered in a mosquito-like voice, Your Highness, I haven't seen the crown princess before. Prince Mo's deep and cold gaze landed on him as if he was looking at a dead person. Such a terrifying gaze caused the disciple who spoke to start trembling for no reason. An extremely powerful pressure spread out like a cold mist, pressing down on everyone present like a mountain. Even Simon Manor's high priest's breathing also stopped, and he looked at that slender man who was like jade and bamboo in disbelief. What a powerful divine sense pressured out in front of him. It was as if everyone was a bunch of ants, unable to raise their heads at all. Everyone was drenched in cold sweat. Some of the weaker cultivators had already been crushed by this terrifying pressure and were forced to kneel on the ground. You dare to lie in front of us? The crown prince didn't move much, but he had already arrived at that disciple's side in a breath's time. He picked him up from the ground and clutched his neck, causing his neck bones to creak and snap. The Do family disciple's eyes suddenly bulged, and he opened his mouth to gasp for breath. Do Heping's gaze contracted. Second young Master Do clenched his fists tightly, forcibly resisting this pressure. With every step he took, he felt the pressure on his body increase by a bit. It was as if it wanted to completely crush him. Second young Master Do held his breath with great difficulty as he walked in front of Prince Mo. He hastily bowed in a very stiff manner, Your Highness, please do not be angry. This disciple does not know the crown princess, so it is understandable that he does not know the details. Actually, the crown princess just passed by here. If Your Highness chases after her now, you should still be able to make it in time. Second young Master Do struggled to explain under the pressure. Where? Prince Mo's dark phoenix eyes lit up. He did not know what had happened to Jojo. Jojo did not communicate with him through the jade talisman. He could only feel a faint aura, but he could not pinpoint the exact location. He felt a deep sense of unease in his heart. He shouldn't have let her come to this mystic beast forest alone. The crown princess went that way. Second Do pointed in a direction. Prince Mo moved towards the depths of the forest with a whoosh. Seeing his speed, second young Master Do's gaze involuntarily contracted, and he hastily said, Your Highness, please be careful. The crown princess seems to have suffered a chi deviation. Prince Mo's phoenix eyes were slightly startled, and he paused. Someone come. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Thousands of figures as fast as the wind instantly landed around him. Chapter 1136. Everyone's hearts trembled when they saw this, and they all subconsciously retreated a few steps. The Eastern Palace had mobilized so many hidden guards. Did they want to kill someone? Hui Feng, take 2,000 men and use this place as the center. Dig 3 feet into the ground and search within 3 kilometers. There should be something abnormal underground, Mo Lien ordered coldly. Abnormal situation. What abnormal situation? What else could there be underground? Everyone's gazes flickered as they looked at the crown prince. Family Head Do, Family Head Moo, and Siming Manor's high priest all silently exchanged glances before retracting their pensive gazes. Only Hui Feng knew that the Crown Prince was referring to something like an underground village. The Crown Prince suspected that there was an underground village cultivation base here. Yes, Your Highness. Hui Feng accepted the order. The rest of you, follow this monarch to find the Crown Princess. Mo Lien coldly tossed out these words as her frosty gaze swept over everyone present. Then, her figure darted into the forest. It wasn't until her figure completely disappeared that everyone couldn't help but exhale softly. Just now, the pressure that the Crown Prince gave them was truly too heavy. When he was present, everyone's breathing had clearly slowed and lowered. This kind of invisible deterrence was simply suffocating. In particular, the look that the Crown Prince gave them before he left caused everyone's hearts to skip a beat. What did that mean? It was clearly, this monarch will remember all of you. So scary. Could it be that this great Crown Prince still wanted to retaliate against them afterward? The family heads all felt insecure and thought that they had to keep a close eye on their properties after they returned to avoid suffering from so-and-so's evil schemes. Moreover, this mystic beast forest was extremely large. The direction that Second Do had casually pointed in was actually slightly off. A slight difference could lead to a great loss, and the direction that the Crown Prince chased in was slightly different from Miss Chiao's. It wasn't that Second Do did it on purpose. In truth, he had only seen Miss Chiao being taken away by the Raksha princess and had only taken a cursory glance. This forest was filled with many different types of trees, and it was like a large-scale maze. Who knew where the person would run to after taking a random turn? At this time, the Raksha princess, who was about to attack Xiao Mu, clutched her broken wrist with a contorted expression as she glared viciously at that person who had suddenly appeared. Ding Yun, you're treating me like this for this little girl? Princess Luo Sha screamed, clutching her wrist. Cult Master Ding was simply annoyed to death by this old woman. She was already in her 50s, yet she dressed up like a little girl all day long. Most importantly, she still had special thoughts about him. Is this appropriate? Come on, he really couldn't eat such an old pheasant that he really wanted to ask this old princess what she saw in him. Why couldn't he change? When Qing Yuan rushed over, she originally thought that she and the others were one step too late, and that the little master whom everyone missed so much might be in trouble. Who knew? The little master sat there meditating as if there was no one else around. Instead, he saw a man and a woman fighting fiercely. Even if Princess Luosha was at her peak, her cultivation was still slightly lower than Cult Master Ding's. Moreover, her conscience had suffered a blow earlier, so it was very strenuous for her to fight now. After exchanging several moves, Cult Leader Ding saw an opening and without the slightest bit of mercy, he flew up and struck heavily on the pit of her stomach from a distance. Princess Luosha rolled into the forest like a sparrow hawk with its string cut. Chapter 1137. Cough, cough, cough. The Raksha princess clutched her chest with a dark expression and crawled up from the ground while clutching her broken wrist. Coughing heavily, she glared at Cult Master Ding with unwillingness and resentment. Ding Yun, you actually injured me for this slut. Have you already forgotten about our friendship over the years? Cult Master Ding's face darkened. When did this seat ever have the slightest bit of friendship with you? Hadn't they just met once several years ago, and this Raksha princess had already become infatuated with him and fallen head over heels in love with him? In this past year, he had indeed been bored to death, so bored that he had nothing to play with. Thus, he killed that snake beauty and used himself as her substitute to sneak into their Raksha ghost sex lair to play around. This game really allowed him to pry into some of the Raksha ghost sex secrets, and he knew that there might be another master behind this old woman. However, he had used the snake beauty's identity to hide by her side. This old woman had no idea at all. She couldn't even recognize his true body, so what bullshit friendship was there to talk about, heh heh. As expected, you forgot everything. The Raksha princess's eyes brimmed with tears as she glanced at him resentfully. What did I forget? Cold Master Ding was baffled and impatient. He leaped forward and raised his palm. If you don't scram, don't blame me for being merciless. The Raksha princess knew that this heartless man was a man of his words. If she didn't leave now, she would inevitably fall into his vicious hands. She couldn't beat him now, and she was injured all over, so it was best to retreat first. The Raksha princess turned around and glanced at that man faintly. Cold Master Ding's hair stood on end, and he was about to slap her again when he saw the Raksha princess turn around with sparkling tears in her eyes. She dragged her feet and left without another word. Cold Master Ding didn't chase after her and couldn't be bothered to look at this old woman. The Raksha princess had just dragged her injured body a few steps when she suddenly saw a green-robed figure appear in front of her. When that person turned around and revealed the iron ghost mask on his face, the Raksha princess couldn't help but tremble all over. Arbor seemed to have sensed something and frowned slightly. He slowly withdrew from the state of cultivation and opened his eyes. Upon seeing this, Cold Master Ding hurriedly flashed in front of her. Little girl, what are you cultivating here for? The mystic energy here isn't dense enough. He looked at her with a smile, only to see that the little girl's face was stoic. Her gaze seemed to fall on his face, but it was as if she couldn't see anything. Her gaze was unfocused. Cold Master Ding was immediately shocked. He stretched out his hand and waved it in front of her. His expression suddenly changed, and he rushed forward to ask, "What happened to your eyes? Who did this to you? Don't make a fuss." Qing Yuan flew over and swept a glance at Cold Master Ding. She said in a proud tone, "My little master can't see or hear what you're saying. All right, you can leave now. Don't disturb our little master's cultivation, or she'll kill you." Cold Master Ding, What's there to be proud of if you can't see or hear? I do know that there's a secret cultivation ground with dense mystic energy in the Mystic Beast Forest. Cold Master Ding's gaze flickered, and he continued, "Do you want to bring her there?" Qing Yuan thought carefully, then ran to Arbor and gestured with her hands. Little Master was so miserable because of this disaster-courting talisman, so she naturally had to cultivate until she could recoup her losses. Only then would she not have lived such a miserable life in vain. Chapter 1138. Cold Master Ding was a bit speechless as he watched from the side. Could the little fellow understand this pantomime of gesturing? He pursed his lips, and a faint light flashed through his alluring eyes. However, this was also good. The longer the little fellow was delayed here, the more likely that Mo Lien would be dead by the time she returned. What bullshit crown princess title would naturally cease to exist, hee. The egg also sneered at the side. You damn green bird, do you think she can understand just by gesturing like this? She's just a little fool right now. You're the fool. You've been a fool for 8 lifetimes. Qing Yuan and the little white squirrel turned around at the same time and roared at him as if they were enemies. Egg, wait until our little mistress wakes up, she'll definitely take care of you. Just you wait. The little white squirrel snorted. What egg? Who's an egg? I already said that I'm a bloodfire god. Bloodfire my ass, you're just an egg. Qing Yuan and the little white squirrel both turned their faces away in disdain. At this time, Arbor already reacted and walked to Cold Master Ding's side with small steps. Cold Master Ding smiled enchantingly and went forward to pull Arbor's little hand. Look at you, you're so wooden-brained. I'll call you Lil the Blockhead from now on. Lil the blockhead very rudely threw away his hand and instinctively reached out to pat his sleeve that was hooked by him. His disdain was evident in his words. Ah ha 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 ha. The egg laughed. He finally found a human that the little girl disliked more than him. This allowed the egg to regain a bit of confidence. See, this great god isn't the one that the little girl dislikes the most. In the next second, the wildly laughing egg was sucked into Arbor's inner world. Damn girl, let me out. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg angrily shouted in her mind. Contracted mystic beasts could communicate with their masters in their spiritual consciousness. The little fat squirrel laughed until he fell and couldn't help but poke at him. Master dislikes you, dislikes you. Arbor reached out and summoned Qing Wan and the little squirrel back into his inner world at the same time. Only then did he turn his head to look at Cult Master Ding. His meaning was self-evident. Lead the way. She didn't expect that the beasts that were randomly gesturing could really communicate with her perfectly. Cult Master Ding raised his hand to touch his chin and nodded repeatedly. Okay, okay, okay. I'll take you there. After saying that, his hand tried to caress her small hand again, but was decisively rejected again. Sigh. Cult Master Ding sighed. The little girl was rejecting him out of instinct. How to break it? If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have captured her mother back then and used himself as her substitute. Look at how much the little girl disliked him now. Ding. Brother Ding. Suddenly, a timid voice came from the forest. Ding Yun was slightly taken aback. He turned his head and saw Axainu standing not too far away. She was biting her lower lip lightly and looking at him with a faint gaze. Cold Master Ding shuddered all over for no reason. Axainu was originally his mother's adopted daughter. He didn't know why she suddenly became his fiancée a few years ago. When the manor announced it to the outside world, he almost thought that he was hallucinating at first. Only after confirming it again and again did he realize that his mother was actually serious. How terrifying. He was just a wanderer of the Jianghu. Did he need such a terrifying thing like a fiancé? He didn't need it at all. For the past 2 years, every time Axainu saw him, she would use this kind of "you betrayed me" expression. She would stare at him foolishly. It really made all the hair on his body stand on end. Chapter 1139. What did you come here for? Ding Yun reflexively took a step back, cowardly hiding behind Xiao Mu. Arbor was expressionless. She only saw the human-shaped stake in front of her and had no idea what they were doing. Big Brother Ding, you promised Mother that you would return to the manor this month. The corners of Axanu's mouth drooped slightly, and she unconsciously clenched her fists tightly. I did promise, but this month isn't over yet. It's the same if I go back at the end of the month. Ding Yun waved his hand impatiently. All right, stop lecturing me. Hurry back to the manor. This isn't a place you can come to. This place is dangerous at every step. With your strength, you really aren't qualified to stay here for long. Arbor suddenly turned around and furrowed her slender brows. She stretched out her little paw and tugged hard at Ding Yun's sleeve. Hurry up and leave. Go cultivate. You're so long-winded like an old man. All right. We'll go right away. Cold Master Ding's sullen and impatient expression immediately swept away, and he grabbed her little hand with a smile. However, slap. Arbor's small, expressionless face was taut. She once again used facts to prove that she disliked him from the bottom of her heart. Cold Master Ding's mouth twitched, and he settled for the next best thing, grabbing her sleeve. I'll hold your hand. It'll be faster this way. Big Brother Ding. Xan's entire body trembled slightly, and she looked at Ding Yun and Arbor in disbelief. Have you forgotten what Mother told you? Have you thrown Mother's teachings to the 9 heavens? Xan asked in a trembling voice. Xan. Ding Yun's face was cold and angry, and his tone was somewhat irritated as he said, I haven't forgotten a single word Mother said. Can I trouble you to stop lecturing me? Was this lecturing? This was a matter of life and death. She was concerned about him. Xan's tears welled up, and she closed her eyes. When she opened them again, a trace of determination flashed through her eyes. Bring young master back to the manor. Yes. 2 men in black appeared behind Xan, and they cupped their fists at Ding Yun. Young master, please follow us back to the manor. Ding Yun sneered, you want to keep me here with just the likes of you? Big brother Ding, if Mother knew that you had feelings for this little girl, she would definitely bring you back at all costs. What nonsense are you spouting? Cold Master Ding's expression changed slightly as he stared at Xan. When have I ever had any strange thoughts about her? All of this is just your imagination. Go back. Ding Yun rebuked angrily. All right. Since you say you don't have any thoughts, then kill her right now. Xan signaled with her eyes, and the 2 manor guards immediately stepped forward. Cold Master Ding was both shocked and furious. He subconsciously blocked in front of Arbor. You dare. Xan suddenly took a step forward and almost bumped into Ding Yun's body. You're not tempted? No. Do you think Mother would let this scourge stay if she knew? All the decisions that Mother makes will only benefit you the most. For the past 20 years, this has never changed from beginning to end. Why don't you listen to her? Big brother Ding, don't be willful and act rashly. Xan coldly shouted, bring young master back. Yes. Without waiting for the 2 manor guards to step forward, Ding Yun suddenly launched an attack. 2 mystic energies flew out of thin air, and at the same time forcing the 2 to retreat. He couldn't care about anything else. He pulled Arbor over, and with a whoosh, he ran away. Young master. A young girl in a pink dress exclaimed. Chapter 1140. Ding Yun dragged Arbor and glided over the forest at an extremely fast speed. Young master. A young girl in a pink dress couldn't help but cry out in alarm. Xan's body swayed slightly as she stared faintly in the direction the 2 people left in, softly muttering something to herself. Young miss, young master ran away again. Why didn't you chase after him? The little girl in the pink dress quickly walked to her side and called out. Only when she got closer did she hear young Mrs. murmur. We can't chase after him, we can't chase after him. Xan's tears streamed down her face. He seems to be merciful in all aspects, but he's actually a heartless and emotionless person. Just now, she pretended to order someone to kill the girl beside him and tested him. Looking at his abrupt change in expression just now, that was called a mixture of shock and anger. For so many years in the past, this man seemed to wear a natural mask even when facing his own mother. Although he had a smiling appearance all day long, in reality, he had an expression that was neither sad nor happy. Xan thought that this person's temperament was naturally extremely cold, but it turned out that wasn't the case. He would also be angry and would stand in front of others to stare at her with a man-eating gaze and roar, "You dare!" Xan squatted on the ground dejectedly, causing Bao Yen, the maidservant in pink, to anxiously circle around her. Young miss, say something. What's going on? Who is that girl beside young master? Seeing that Xan didn't move for a long time, the impatient Bao Yen anxiously stomped her feet. All right, all right. If you're not going to look for her, I'll go look for young master. After saying that, she turned around and dived into the forest again, disappearing without a trace in a flash. Xanu cried for a while before taking out a pen and paper and hastily writing a letter and handing it to her two subordinates. Quickly return to the manor and personally hand this letter to old madam. Yes. The two manor guards didn't dare to delay and hurriedly cupped their fists to receive the letter before turning to leave in a hurry. On the other side, Mo Lien paused her steps and turned to look at the gloomy forest path with a slight frown. She had no idea where Jojo had run off to. Earlier, she could still feel a faint trace of her aura, but now... A soft sound was heard from the underbrush, and a head suddenly popped out. The two hidden guards behind the crown prince quickly moved forward and suppressed the other party with one move. They pulled the girl out from the bushes. The strength of their hands was not weak. Hey hey hey, softer, softer, softer. Sikong Fuling hurriedly called out. Mo Lien's expression changed slightly, and she landed beside her with a swoosh. She unfurled a silk scroll in her hand and asked coldly, "Have you seen this little girl?" Sikong Fuling, who was being escorted by two hidden guards, cast a sidelong glance at that painting. On the drawing paper, although the little girl's face was expressionless, the lively smile in her eyes was completely embellished. It could be seen that the person who drew this painting rather hoped that this stoic face would smile frequently. Sikong Fuling's eyes turned slightly before she shook her head and replied seriously, "Never seen him before." This unknown wild man in front of her didn't lose out to her older brother in terms of looks, temperament, and appearance. He couldn't be having an affair with the little girl, right? Mo Lien's icy gaze flickered slightly. The hidden guard's sword slashed toward Sikong Fuling's face. "If you don't speak, I'll disfigure your little face." Sikong Fuling's eyes bulged, and she shrieked with a pale face, "Hey hey hey hey." Chapter 1141. You're so unreasonable. Do I deserve to die just because I haven't seen this young lady before? Sikong Fuling glared at Mo Lien while blowing her beard. Her eyes swiveled as she said, "You look like a decent person, but why are you so heartless? You don't even have the slightest bit of tender feelings for girls." The hidden guard at the side twitched his mouth slightly. "Do it," Mo Lien icily instructed. Seeing that the blade in the hidden guard's hand was about to leave a bloody mark on Sikong Fuling's face, Sikong Fuling immediately panicked and hurriedly shouted, "Hey hey hey. Stop 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 stop. Hey, I say, handsome lord, what exactly do you want to know? I already told you that I really don't know her and have never seen her before." What a joke. She already knew that her elder brother was a little interested in this young lady, so of course she wouldn't trick her elder brother into helping an outsider. Humph humph, she wouldn't say it even if she knew. "You're lying." Mo Lien's voice sounded as though it had been scooped up from the depths of hell as it was unusually cold. "You have her scent on you." His gaze landed on this young lady in front of him, deep and frosty to the extreme. This young lady didn't seem to be a member of an orthodox sect. Her thin muslin dress had been scraped around in the forest overgrown with dead trees, and it had already become very messy by now. Even though she was wearing an outer garment, it couldn't conceal the fair skin underneath. Sikong Fuling. "Take it away, take it away." Sikong Fuling pursed her small mouth and forcefully slapped away the two hidden guards' hands. She shook her body and straightened her collar as she muttered, "It's not like you have a dog's nose. Why are you so sensitive?" Insolence. The hidden guards glared angrily as they berated in unison. Sikong Fuling jumped in fright and hurriedly patted her chest with her small hand as she whined coquettishly, "Why are you so fierce?" All right, I'll tell you." Her eyes swiveled again as she suppressed the crafty glint in her eyes and said unwillingly, "Yes, I've seen that young lady. However, we've already parted ways. You've also seen it now, I'm alone. Where did she go? Mo Lien questioned. How would I know where she went? Sikong Fuling rolled her eyes and cried out, that young lady was ice, cold and didn't say a word for half a day. When she left, she didn't even tell me. How would I know where she went? That wretched girl had caused her to wander around the forest in search of her. She was even afraid that she would starve to death, that just thinking about it made her angry. Since when did she, Sikong Fuling, have such rotten good intentions? Mo Lien raised her hand slightly, and several hidden guards immediately rushed up to restrain Sikong Fuling. Let's go. Leave, your sister. Sikong Fuling cried out angrily, what are you doing? What's the point of capturing me? Even if you catch me, I won't be able to make the little girl appear. Hey, 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 it hurts. My hand hurts. Stop pulling. What the fuck, this lunatic. Just because she had come into contact with the little girl before, how crazy was she? Lead the way. Lead the way. Brothers. I really don't know where she is. Sikong Fuling cried out in exasperation. Let go. I'm warning you. If you don't let go, I won't be courteous anymore. A hidden guard unceremoniously slapped the back of her head. Let's go. Sikong Fuling still wanted to resist, but she was forcefully pushed and pulled by several hidden guards, and her hands were shackled with mystic energy locking shackles. Sheath. Chapter 1142. Tsuewe Mountain. Mountain ranges stacked on top of each other, stretching on endlessly. Carefree Valley was located at the bottom of Tsuewe Mountain and was covered by miasma all year round. Ordinary people could not get close. The ingenious part of Beijing Manor was that it was located in the center of Carefree Valley and was surrounded by a green lake. The manor was covered with exotic flowers and plants. Everywhere was lush and beautiful. The old madam of Beijing Manor, Ding Xian, was a great beauty whose name was known throughout the pugilistic world when she was young. The most commonly accepted legend about her was that she was hurt by love. It was said that she had once chased after the young master of the mermaid race. Who would have thought that the young hero's heart already belonged to someone else? In the end, she was trapped by love and deeply hurt, so she hid from the world and refused to see anyone. A few years later, the rumors became even more outrageous. It was said that after she was hurt by love, she casually found someone to marry. After she became pregnant, she personally killed her husband and gave birth to the young master of Beijing Manor, Ding Yun. After that family found out that their son had died an unnatural death, they launched an attack on Carefree Valley more than 10 years ago. The ending was very tragic. Hundreds of people in the family were all massacred by Beijing Manor overnight. There were even more exaggerated rumors that Ding Xian actually gave birth to twins at that time, but only one young master, Ding Yun, was announced to the public. The reason was that when the two children were 10 years old, she made them kill each other. The one who survived was the young master, and the one who died was thrown out of the valley to feed the wolves. From then on, Beijing Manor was demonized. Although it was one of the 4 great manors, it had long been removed from the ranks of the righteous path. The sun was setting in the west, and the setting sun was setting. In the pavilion in the middle of the lake sat an old monk with a white beard and white eyebrows. In front of him was a cup of high-quality tea that was emitting light smoke. 2 maidservants stood on both sides of him until a cough slowly sounded. Madam. Ding Xian waved to the 2 maidservants, and the 2 maidservants bowed and retreated out of the pavilion. Cough, cough, cough. Ding Xian was more than 50 years old. Her cheeks were thin, and her wrinkled face was full of vicissitudes of life. She leaned on a walking stick carved from black sandalwood and slowly sat down in front of the old monk. She smiled and said, "Master, sorry to keep you waiting." The old monk stroked his beard and smiled. "Madam's body is better." Cough, cough, cough. Ding Xian chuckled. "It's been over 10 years. After taking the medicine that Grandmaster gave me, my condition has improved." The old monk nodded with a smile. "Master, you came a few days earlier than the scheduled date. Is there anything else you need to do?" "Madam, do you still remember the divination I performed for young Master Ding 15 years ago?" "Of course." Ding Xian nodded solemnly. This old monk observed the stars last night and discovered that young Master's fated star faintly emitted a fiendish red aura. Ding Xian was slightly surprised. "Do you know what it is?" "The red light is binding the fated star, indicating that the young Master has already fallen into the tribulation of love." The old monk said softly. "Love tribulation?" Ding Xian was shocked. She shook her head and said, "Impossible. All these years, Yun-Er's natural disposition has been undisciplined and free. She has never been reluctant to part with any woman. How could she have fallen in love? I don't really believe it either. Although this old monk has jumped out of the secular world, I have often heard news of young Master Ding's adventures. Ever since I received Great Master's advice 15 years ago, I've been very careful. There are only a few old maidservants in the manor. Yun-Er doesn't like any of them. Could it be that in the years when young Master Ding went out to establish the demonic sect?" Chapter 1143. "You mean that Sikong fooling by his side?" Ding Xian shook her head. "That's even more impossible. For Yun-Er's safety, I've investigated every single one of his female subordinates," Ding Xian said with certainty. "This madam has investigated that Saint Sikong fooling. She has always treated Yun-Er as an elder brother and nothing else. Yun-Er only sees her as a younger sister. As for those other female subordinates, they're even less worth mentioning. A few of them had designs on Yun-Er, but after Yun-Er discovered them, they were all personally executed by him. Her son had always been such a heartless child since he was young. Don't be fooled by how he laughed and joked with others all day long, as if he was very happy. In reality, he was abnormally cold and indifferent. He didn't even have the slightest bit of affection for his own mother. As a result, the number of times he returned home these past few years had gradually decreased. If she hadn't sent people to call him back again and again, he probably wouldn't have thought of returning home to visit his mother for several years. The old monk sighed and said, "But the matter that this old monk has been worried about for more than 10 years still happened in the end. Madam, the most important thing right now is to find this person as soon as possible so that we can think of a way to resolve it. Yun-Er, he has suffered enough. It's also my fault. When I was pregnant with him, I made him suffer so much and even almost caused him to die. I don't want him to experience any more tribulations or difficulties. Master, you must help me, you must help me." Cough, cough, cough. "Madam, please rest assured. The old manor lord of Beijing Manor has always been this old monk's old friend. This old monk will definitely not disappoint his old friend." Ding Xian lightly bit her lip and nodded. "Many thanks, Master. This child should have lived like a prince for his entire life, but he was born with such a bitter fate. It's me who harmed him, it's me. If he had listened to my father back then, he wouldn't have come to this stage today. Now it's also as Master's divination. If the love tribulation isn't removed, he will definitely suffer for all his lifetimes." Ding Xian softly murmured, "Master, I don't want to be like this. I only wish for my child to be safe and happy. Is this too much?" "Madam, eldest miss sent a letter back, a middle-aged female servant in green clothes quickly walked to the pavilion and said. When Ding Xian heard the servant mention Axan Yu, her expression softened. Bring the letter in. This child, was the daughter-in-law candidate she had personally chosen because she was very clear that Yun, did not like her. With such a daughter-in-law, Yun was safe. He would never be moved by Axan Yu, so naturally, he would not deal with that troublesome love tribulation. Speaking of which, the reason why her son couldn't fall in love with anyone was entirely because of her. It was her fault, but she couldn't make up for it now that she knew that she was selfish and sacrificed you, for Yun, However, she had previously told you, about this matter, letting her clearly know that Yun's life would be in danger after falling in love. You had to choose whether to marry or not. Xan Yu personally agreed and didn't care much about that. That was why the marriage was finalized a few years ago. Beijing Manor always had its own special communication channel, so letters were exchanged very quickly. Ding Xian recalled that Yu had left for 2 days and probably had something to report, so she hurriedly opened the letter to take a look. She jumped up and shouted with a stern expression, Men, summon 2 Beitan enforcers to head to the Mystic Beast Forest and kill that woman by young Lord's side. Oh. Chapter 1144. 2 days later. Arbor opened her eyes, a hint of dissatisfaction in her heart. The barrier to the peak of level 13 was clearly within reach, but no matter how long she cultivated, she still couldn't break through it. If she was still sensible in the past, she would definitely understand that cultivating so impatiently was actually not a good thing. But now, in just a few short days, she had absorbed only 1/5 of the essence soil. This was really too fast. Cold Master Ding walked over with a pile of fruits. Seeing her open her eyes, his eyes couldn't help but light up. Little blockhead, you've finished cultivating. Arbor blinked, her gaze following him back and forth. Seeing him holding a large pile of colorful little fruits, she couldn't help but stand up and trot to his side. While she was at it, she snatched a few fruits from his hands and subconsciously stuffed them into her mouth. Cold Master Ding stared blankly, then waved his hand in front of her eyes in surprise. Your eyes are better. Arbor ignored him. Cold Master Ding saw that she had eaten a few fruits, so he thought that the fruits he picked up tasted pretty good. So he also grabbed 2 fruits and threw them into his mouth, then afterwards, he spat it out with a peh. His handsome face completely scrunched up, and he looked at Xiao Mu in disbelief. It's so sour, don't eat it. As he spoke, he quickly slapped away the fruits in her hands. How can this be eaten? This child was too careless. It was so sour, but she could still eat it so calmly. She was simply too amazing. Xiao Mu's jet black eyes rolled slightly before she looked away. She turned around and pattered away, about to open up a path. Cold Master Ding hurriedly grabbed her sleeve and said with a stifled expression, How about this, I'll take you to the city to eat good food, okay? Xiao Mu flung away his hand that was grabbing her sleeve and crisply patted away the non-existent dust on her sleeve. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, her brows suddenly twitched, and an austere aura directly pounced at her, so fast that it was unimaginable. Arbor instinctively flipped to the side and dodged the fatal strike. He leaped lightly and landed beside Ding Yun. Ding Yun was shocked. His body quickly moved, and he was already in front of Arbor. He glared angrily at the 2 elders who suddenly came out of the forest. North Altar Protector, what are you 2 doing? Young Lord, sorry for the offense. One of the old men shouted angrily and flew forward to grab Ding Yun. The other person stepped forward, and a thick wave of profound energy was attached to it. He once again attacked Arbor. Arbor turned her body and was about to jump away when she saw a pair of blood-red scissors coming towards her. It was aimed at her wrist, and with a "kacha" sound, the scissors cut. The profound artifact was very powerful. It cut off a piece of her sleeve from her wrist in a single move. If she hadn't retracted her hand quickly, that thing would have cut off her fair and tender wrist. Bang! Arbor gave a side kick, hitting the back of the old man's hand. Her body moved back a bit, and she nimbly stepped on the withered bushes. With a flash, she appeared behind the old man. A black ferrule suddenly appeared in her hand, and with a surge of profound energy, she abruptly struck the back of the old man's head. The old man quickly opened a defensive barrier and turned around to block with the large scissors. But with a clang, Arbor's wrist was actually shaken by that pair of scissors until it ached, and she took a step back. Elder Heng, stop! Ding Yun's gaze shrunk, and he suddenly wanted to sweep away the protector who was pestering him like a madman. Chapter 11:45. Young master, don't be so obstinate. Let Elder Heng kill this woman, and you come back with us. No. Ding Yun was very anxious. He was very clear about the cultivation levels of these two old ghosts. That was the suppressed cultivation of a level 4 spiritual master. Lil Wood was definitely not Elder Heng's match. I'll go with you. Let her go. Ding Yun shouted angrily. Let her go. Elder Heng, who was holding the large scissors, shook his head. I'm sorry, young master. This is Madam's order. Today, this old man must leave this woman's life here. After saying this, Elder Heng stepped up the attack in his hands. The large scissors flipped up and down, and with a fierce force, directly cut towards Arbor's small neck. Arbor turned around 4 or 5 times, frowning in displeasure. She coldly looked at the large scissors pointed at her throat. Clang! Her small jade-white hand came in contact with the large scissors, and there was a metallic spark. The old man was suddenly shocked, and his eyes widened in disbelief. How can this be? This woman could actually collide with his mystic weapon with her bare hands. While he was thinking, Arbor slapped away the scissors with her ferrule. She raised her hand, and 3 hexagonal snowflakes flew out. Bang, bang. They cut 2 trees beside the old man, and the upper half of the trees directly fell down. Seeing that it was about to fall on the old man, Elder Heng suddenly threw out a palm, and directly smashed the fallen tree into pieces. I really underestimated you. In a split second, wisps of spiritual energy fluctuated from the elder's body, and his level 4 spiritual cultivation surged inch by inch. He abruptly stretched out a withered black claw to grab Chiao Mu's shoulder. When the old man who was holding Ding Yun saw this, a trace of ruthlessness flashed across his brows. He suddenly jumped up, and threw a sword from Arbor's back, directly approaching. 2 enforcers. Cult Master Ding looked at the scene in front of him with fear. His body moved faster than his brain, and in an instant, he pounced towards Arbor. He suddenly grabbed Arbor's small body and turned her around to press her down. One of the protectors didn't have time to pull back his sword, and with a rip, a bloody wound appeared on Cult Master Ding's back. Elder Heng's gaze slightly shrank, almost immediately rushing forward to check his injuries. Young master. The other person also hurriedly withdrew his sword and bent forward in fear. Young master, how are you? Ding Yun lay there with his face down and did not move for a long time. The 2 enforcers were anxious to death. One of them reached out to help him turn around, while the other lowered his head and hurriedly called out, Young master, young master. A cold light suddenly flashed through the depths of Ding Yun's eyes, which were covered by his hair. His hands suddenly burst out with spiritual light as he punched the waist of the 2 enforcers with his left and right fists. Crack. Two crisp sounds of bones cracking could be heard. The eyes of the two old guardians were wide open as they were hit in the waist and abdomen by the fist wind. Their entire body flew back horizontally and fell heavily to the ground with a bang. They completely didn't expect that their young master would suddenly attack them. After Ding Yun's attack succeeded, he quickly stood up. He kicked with the tip of his foot and picked up the sword that one of the enforcers dropped. Without blinking, the sword's light exploded and suddenly slid past the necks of the two enforcers. Two extremely thin lines of blood appeared on the necks of the two North Altar enforcers. Until they died, their dead fish eyes were wide open in anger, completely unable to understand why their young master would kill them. Chapter 1146. Disregarding the injury on his back, Ding Yun hastily walked to Arbor's side and grabbed her hand. Let's go. She probably didn't just send these two people. However, as soon as he moved, he couldn't help but lean heavily against a nearby tree. He only barely managed to steady himself by holding onto the tree. The little girl flung his hand away and expressionlessly glanced at him. Cold Master Ding could only turn to look at her with a wry smile. Suddenly, the little fellow pattered to his side and tapped two of his acupoints with her fingers. Then, she very instinctively took out a bottle of medicinal powder and poured a bit onto the wound on his back. Afterwards, with a smack, her little hand heavily pressed against the wound on his back. Who knew what kind of ointment she had stuck on his wound? The blood on his back immediately stopped flowing, and the wound caused by mystic energy didn't hurt as much as before. Cold Master Ding tugged at the corner of his mouth and forced a smile at the little girl. I'm fine. We have to leave this place as soon as possible. Let's go. He understood his mother's methods too well. She probably wouldn't feel at ease even if he thought about it and would probably bring people here to personally execute Lil the Blockhead. Swish swish swish, heavenly law's invisible bindings swiftly wrapped around Cult Master Ding's limbs and firmly fixed him in place. A harsh glint flashed through Ding Yun's eyes. He abruptly flung his hand and grabbed Arbor. He leaped into the air and swiftly broke free of heavenly law's bindings. However, his complexion paled even more, and his breathing was slightly hurried. How could Heavenly Law let off someone who recklessly used spiritual energy in the lower star domain like this? Invisible chains chased after Ding Yun at high speed. Ding Yun dodged while dragging Arbor through the forest. In the blink of an eye, the two figures were already far away. Crown Prince Mo raised his head slightly in interest. He saw several crows that had shed their feathers cawing as they flew past the treetop before flapping their wings and flying away. Your Highness, we found an underground base 5 kilometers to the southeast. Huifeng's expression was a bit excited. It looks quite large. Does Your Highness want to go take a look? Mo Lien glanced into the distance again before nodding slightly and following Huifeng toward the southeast. In an abandoned hut outside the Mystic Beast Forest. At this moment, the Raksha princess was kneeling in front of a man with a metal demon mask, trembling all over. She didn't even dare to raise her head. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. It seemed like he had been severely beaten up just now. Idiot! For your selfishness, you exposed our underground base and even caused us to suffer such a huge loss. You don't deserve to die. The middle-aged man was furious. He suddenly stomped on Princess Luosha's body. The Raksha princess fell to the ground and curled into a ball. She trembled as she cried out, "All Master, please spare me. Please spare me. Master's plan has been completely ruined by you, stupid woman." The man with the iron demon mask suddenly stepped forward, squatted down, put one hand on his knee, and grabbed Princess Raksha's hair with the other. "Take everyone and leave the base immediately." Princess Luoxiao's pupils constricted. Master, you mean to give up on this base? This was the second largest base in the organization. Were they going to give it up so easily? Slap. The middle-aged man slapped her. What else can we do? The Crown Prince's men are about to search this place. It's too late, Hall Master. Their men have already arrived. Burn. Burn it all. A cold glint flashed through the middle-aged man's eyes. Chapter 1147. Huifeng gloomily directed the hidden guards to put out the fire. However, this underground fire burned abnormally fast, and several explosions could be heard in the distance. Mo Lian frowned and reached out to stop him. No need to search. Let's go. The opponent didn't seem to be simple. Of course, if not for this, they wouldn't have been able to secretly operate so many underground bases without being discovered. Your Highness, we can still search quickly. There's no need. Since they've already given up on this place, they won't leave any clues here, Mo Lian said indifferently. Let's go. The most important thing is to find the Crown Princess and bring her back. Mo Lian imperceptibly creased her brows. Could it be that the little fellow had missed him and returned to the Mo Kingdom capital by herself first? He couldn't calm himself down. He kept having the feeling that something bad had happened. My Lian section break, 2 days later, on the bustling streets of Guanlon City. Sir. I finally found you. A little girl with a rosy pink face and an extremely tender face panted as she caught up to an enchanting man in purple. She panted as she looked at him joyfully. Ding Yun looked at her with an unsightly expression. How did you find me? Beijing Manor's method of finding people was a bit special. Ding Yun was worried that Bao Yan, this girl, had exposed his whereabouts and lured his mother's group over. Bao Yan quickly waved her hand cleverly and said, I didn't inform Madam. Sir, I only saw you twice in the forest, but you ignored me when I called out to you. I chased after you the entire way before finally catching up. Cold Master Ding stopped, his figure swaying a couple of times in exhaustion. In order to break free of that damn heavenly law's restraints these 2 days, he had expended quite a bit of effort. This damn heavenly law was truly a dog trying to catch mice, meddling in other people's business. It was like gangrene attached to his bones the entire way, refusing to let go. It was so annoying that he was about to be annoyed to death. Fortunately, he had finally broken free for the time being. It seemed like he still had to be careful when using spiritual energy in the future. Sir. The little girl Bao Yan hastily went up to support his arm, looking over worriedly. You used your spiritual energy, didn't you? You promised old madam that you wouldn't use your spiritual power casually in the outside world. I'm fine. Cold Master Ding indifferently brushed away the girl's arm and frowned slightly. All right, go back to the manor first. Why, young master, don't you want to go back with me? Ding Yun shook his head. I'm not going back for now. You can go. Remember not to tell anyone about my whereabouts. I'm not leaving. Bao Yan stomped her feet and shouted, I finally found young master. I'm not going anywhere. I'll just follow you. You. Young master, why don't you go back? You haven't returned to the manor for more than 2 years. Madam misses you very much. Why are you asking so many questions? Cold Master Ding's expression became increasingly impatient. He turned his head to look at the little girl who was standing at the side, as cool as water and abnormally indifferent. Young master, who is she? Bao Yan immediately looked at Arbor warily. It was this girl, right? She made young Miss Axean so angry that she cried. Arbor had just recovered his sight among his 5 senses, so everything he saw seemed a bit strange. As he looked around, his gaze landed on a restaurant signboard. Morning Cloud Restaurant. She instinctively wanted to step inside. Chapter 1148. When Cult Master Ding saw this, he hurriedly chased after her, reaching out to grab her small hand. Jojo, you're hungry, aren't you? How could Arbor know what it felt like to be hungry right now? She was completely acting out of instinct. Seeing Cult Master Ding run all the way to her side, Arbor suddenly raised her eyes to look at him. Although her face was expressionless, in Cult Master Ding's eyes, she looked adorably silly. He saw her reach out 2 jade-white fingers and forcefully tug at his sleeve. Why are you tugging at our young master's sleeve? Bao Yan impatiently pushed her hand away. Go, 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 don't bother our young master anymore. Arbor's small face was expressionless as she swept a glance at her, then turned her small head to continue looking at Morning Cloud Restaurant. The little fellow's large eyes blinked twice, revealing an adorable yearning look. Cult Master Ding hurriedly asked, "You're hungry, right? You want to eat, right? Answer me, and I'll bring you up." How could Arbor know what the hell he was talking about? This Cult Master Ding once again tragically didn't get any response. He couldn't help but sigh lowly and could only say, "All right, then let's go in." He didn't expect this little blockhead to have any reaction. In any case, she didn't seem to like him from beginning to end. Young master. Bao Yan grabbed his hand and rolled her eyes as she softly said, "Spare me, young master. Look at her, she's so silly and can't even speak. She's definitely a silly girl." When he thought of the first time they met, Arbor's expressionless face, her eyes unable to see, her mouth unable to speak, her face expressionless when she was with people and things, like a moving jade statue, Cult Master Ding's heart couldn't help but tighten. "It's none of your business." Cult Master Ding raised his hand, but before he could grab the little girl's small hand, he saw her turn and walk into Morning Cloud Restaurant. "Bao Yan, go back. Go back to the manor and tell my mother that I don't have time to go back in the short term." Cult Master Ding might also feel that his words were a bit too much, so he couldn't help but frown and say, "Tell her that I'll go back to visit her in a few days." "But young master, you promised old madam." Ding Yun did not wait for her to finish and ran into Morning Cloud Restaurant to chase after the young lady. Bao Yan took a deep look at her young master and watched him hurriedly enter the restaurant. She stomped her feet and hurriedly followed him in. "Ah, young master, young miss, what do you want to eat? Our shop doesn't accept mystic coins, we only accept mystic grade and above herbs or forging materials." The waiter from the Morning Cloud Restaurant welcomed them with a smile. "I've really earned a lot today." The beautiful ice sculpture in front of him made his eyes light up. The waiter hurriedly wiped the table and stool and asked the little beauty to sit down. There was a middle-aged man who was eating noodles at the side. With half a noodle in his mouth, he stared at Arbor in a daze. "What are you looking at?" Ding Yun glared at the man, causing the middle-aged man to shrink his neck and hurriedly retract his gaze. Arbor was also amused. She also turned her head to look at the middle-aged man. In fact, she was looking at the bowl of noodles placed in front of him. Ding Yun tilted his head and looked at the little girl in front of him with a smile. He threw a piece of forging material to the waiter and said, 2 bowls of noodles." "Alrighty." The waiter happily went to prepare. Not a moment later, 2 steaming bowls of noodles were placed on the table. Ding Yun swept a glance at Bao Yan standing to the side and frowned. "Why aren't you leaving? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.